Good morning. Welcome to the 2022 Fantasy Wildcard Charity Streamathon. I'll be one of your co-hosts today, Kev. You can follow me on Twitter at dynasty_goat. Two legends with me throughout the day. We'll come to the first legend and co-host, Matt, who you can follow on Twitter at MattFFDynasty. Good morning, Matt.
Morning, Kev. How are you doing today, mate?
I'm feeling very good. Didn't get much sleep last night because it was like Christmas Eve for me, but I'll manage very fine. We've got the adrenaline kicking in now, so I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Yeah, same. Had a bit of a restless night. Obviously, far too excited for today, but I've stocked up. I've got plenty of iced coffees. I've had two already, so the bowels may struggle, but I'm going to power through.
Wow, speaking of bowels struggling, I'll bring on to our next legend. God. What a hero this guy is, and he's rocking the memorabilia as well. It's our co-host Ali. You can follow on Twitter at FFDynastyGrill. Good morning, Ali.
Good morning, Kev. We don't say that very often, do we? Exciting day today. Can't wait to get going. We've got a couple of fantastic guests to start with. Just struggling a bit with hay fever, so hopefully it won't interrupt me too much today. But yeah, just really looking forward to kicking it off.
Good stuff, mate. So, as you alluded to, we've got 16 hours of Streamathon. It's 4 streams in total. All 32 teams are going to be covered from a dynasty perspective. And we're raising funds for a fantastic charity today for Mind Charity. It's a fantastic charity supporting people with mental health issues and facilitating improvement in their mental health. So, us at the Fantasy Wildcard, we want to help support this amazing charity. We'd be delighted if you could too. And to do this, please check out our link tree on our Twitter page at Fantasy Wildcard. The website can also be found on our banner at the bottom of the stream today, justgiving.com, fundraising, Fantasy Wildcard 2022. Thank you for your support if you've donated already. Still plenty of time to donate as well. We've got until the 6th of June. So if you're watching this and it's not Saturday the 21st of May, you've still got a chance to contribute and help us with this amazing cause. So we'll now begin the Streamathon. It's stream 1 of 4, and over the next 4 hours, we'll be discussing the AFC and the NFC North teams from a dynasty perspective. We're going to kick off at the AFC North with the Bengals and the Ravens, and the guests we've gotten to kick us off, it was an obvious choice. 2 legends of the game, up-and-coming guys that they've recently joined the Fantasy Wildcard as 2 out of the 3 co-hosts of the Fantasy Wildcard Rewind show. It's going to be starting in September, so we'll welcome them in now. From the Wildcard Rewind team, we've got Max and we've got Paul. Good morning, lads. How are you?
Good morning. Very, very well, gentlemen. How are we all doing?
Decent.
Morning, guys. How are we? All right?
Yeah, not bad, Paul. Not bad.
Nice of Max to show up.
Well, we were discussing there might be a time difference between Scotland and England. I wasn't sure, but no, we're just messing with. We're a few moments behind, but nothing too crazy. And we've got a jam-packed show, so we'll get into it straight away. We're going to kick off with the Bengals, and we'll lead off with you, Matt.
Yeah, so obviously going over to the Bengals, I think we've got to start at the quarterback position. Obviously, Joe Burrow coming off that fantastic season, finishes the QB7. He's currently ranked on Keep Trade Cut at QB4. So my question over to these 2 guys is in that tier now on his own after the top 3, clear of the guys below him. So I just want to know, do you feel that's the correct value? That's where he should be? Do you think maybe he can break into that top 3? And is he clear of those guys like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott?
So, well, first of all, I'm actually in Northern. As you can tell by this lovely background, I'm home for a wedding, so I'm in my parents' house. Obviously, as you can tell, because only someone's parents have got this upholstery. So, yeah, I'm home for a little bit. So no time difference. Just me being slightly unorganized and making sure my excellent notes for this first question are ready to go. So. My answer sort of about Joe Burrow is I think that you could rank him in that 4 slot. You can kind of justify it. But I don't really agree with the tier break that is there on Keep Trade Cut. And I kind of dug into I'm not a big stats guy, so I kind of dug into some stats and I thought I can do this. And I seen that Joe Burrow's actually got the highest yards per attempt in the league. And I thought, well, that's quite an important stat. And then I see who was second. Anyone have a guess about who was second for highest yards per attempt in the league?
Herbert.
I thought Herbert. It's not Herbert.
You've got us in suspense. Let us
Daniel
know.
Jones.
Anyone thinking Jimmy Garoppolo?
Oh, don't.
Wow.
Not this early in the morning, Mags.
Jimmy G was second, so I thought, oh, maybe that isn't actually that important. And then I thought, oh, he's got the highest percentage completion as well at 70%. Any idea who was right under him? Jimmy Garoppolo again at 68%. So I'm thinking, well, maybe these things don't matter, or maybe stats are all a load of rubbish. So I thought I'll just have a look at other things instead. What I do like about Joe Burrow is that, he has got, that throwing touchdown upside, maybe not as much as Dak Prescott does, but certainly more than Lamar Jackson does. Like Lamar Jackson only threw 16 touchdowns last year, and Joe Burrow threw 34 touchdowns last year. But Lamar sort of more than made up for that with his rushing. He rushed more than Dak and Burrow put together comfortably, more than doubled their numbers put together. So it kind of just depends on what you lean to be important. Do you think that you want that longevity with Burrow? He's probably going to play a bit longer. Something people forget about Burrow is that he is an older prospect coming out of college. So Burrow and Lamar Jackson are the same age. Kyler Murray is a year younger than Joe Burrow. Dak Prescott a few years older. So out of the 3-4 of those, I would actually lean Kyler Murray the most. I would put Lamar Jackson, then Joe Burrow, and I put Dak at the bottom of that list.
Yeah, that sounds about right in my head. We'll come to you quickly, Paul. I can see you rocking the Cardinals hoodie. Any thoughts on this question regarding Burrow, Kyler Murray, if you just them two in particular? Who you got?
So I've got Murray ahead of Burrow and Herbert, but that's probably me just being a big...
Oh, my God.
I know. Shock, right?
Don't need coffee this morning. Wow.
But I have got Murray, Herbert, Burrow, Dak, and Lamar all in the same tier. I think I'd be happy with any one of them as my QB1, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we've all got the top 7 there, but maybe just slightly tier breaks and slightly in a different order. So I think we're all pretty legendary on that one. We'll now come on to Joe Burrow's backfield teammate, Joe Mixon. And over to you, Ellie.
Yeah, so talk about the running back for the Bengals, Joe Mixon. I've had a few comments this offseason already, just people concerned about Joe Mixon is going to be 26 years old when the season begins. And we often phrase 26 as being that cut-off age where we want to sell running backs and they start to fall off a cliff. So just give a bit of advice. Should they be moving off Joe Mixon right now? And just what are your thoughts on Joe Mixon for Dynasty right now?
So for me, I think Joe Mixon's a bit weird. I think he's somebody who is always up there with the top sort of 10 running backs. But when you go to sell him, nobody values him that high. So I think the value of Joe Mixon is always a bit lower than what you want for Joe Mixon. So I'm sticking with Joe Mixon. And actually, I think I play the same as you, Kev. I base everything on a 2-year window.
You're a good lad.
And actually, I think Joe Mixon is okay for the next 2 years. And I believe in 2025, he's a free agent. So you've got him the next couple of years at least under contract with the Bengals. So I think he's a solid play at the moment, and he's in a great offense. And coming out of this draft with the Bengals not drafting any running backs, I think that was a massive win and a massive arrow up for me. So I'm all in on Mixon.
Yeah, sounds good. Mags, if you have got Mixon, you've got some concerns, maybe you're looking to get a little bit younger at the position. Is there anybody that's going after Mixon in startups that you could maybe pivot to and get a bit of value that you like going below him?
Yeah, so Joe Mixon, kind of echoing what Paul said there as well. Like I thought it was massive that the Bengals didn't really strengthen that position there. So I actually think Joe Mixon is a little bit underrated. I see, he is kind of going around the same sort of position. You get somebody maybe like a J.K. Dobbins, you might be able to grab around the same sort of time. So you could pivot off Mixon and move to like somebody like Dobbins. You could be really risky and like pivot off Mixon. You might be able to get like Saquon Barkley for Joe Mixon even at this stage if you want to really go a bit risky. But to be honest, there's no one really around that range that I would sort of swap straight up for Joe Mixon, because like Paul said, he is sort of undervalued across the community, and I think what you're going to get from him is going to be well worth the price that you pay. So I'm not really looking to move down from Joe Mixon unless I'm feeling really, really risky, like grabbing Saquon Barkley or something like that, or maybe a package to get Christian McCaffrey or one of those guys who's taking a big plummet.
Yeah, that makes sense. Matt, Ali, any thoughts on Mixon, what you're doing with him at the moment?
Me personally, I'm holding him. I've had him. I mean, over the years, I've been a big Mixon truther. When he wasn't performing, I was the guy who was hyping him up, and now that he's hit that form, I feel like a genius there. But I was a little bit too early on him. But yeah, I'm keeping him. I've got him in Dynasty. I mean, there's not many running backs in this game that we play that you could class as workhorses that get that full workload. Joe Mixon, he's one of those guys that stands out and sees the majority of the touches in that backfield. So for me, he's one of those running backs that you've got to have in fantasy. You feel like he's got a safe floor with the opportunity that he's got, despite him getting up there in age. I'm not too worried. Like Paul touched upon, he's still signed to that big contract, so I feel like you've got a bit of security there as well. So yeah, I'm still more than happy to keep hold of Mixon, especially where he's going currently.
Yeah, me too. He's my running back 8 in Dynasty, just below, in the same tier of Austin Eckler. And I think the trouble is, a lot of fantasy players these days just obsessed by age. So when that running back hits 26 or even 25 now, they're trying to flip them. But people aren't interested in buying running backs at that age, so they're just not going to give you the value that you're going to get if you just stuck with him and rode him out. I think he's going to be a top 5 or 6 running back again this season. So you might as well hold on to him because you're just not going to get that value back in a trade. So I'm the same as everybody else. He's a hold for me at the minute.
Indeed. And before I come on to the next question, I just want to bring up one of the comments in the chat that we've had. It's from the third member of the Wildcard Rewind team. It's Hannah Rowland. She just said, "Morning all, shame you're missing the best member of the team." Great to see Paul and Mike representing the Wildcard Rewind team. So appreciate the shout out, Hannah. And yeah, it's going to be an exciting time when we get the 3 of you together for next season. Yep. But back to the Bengals now. Jamar Chase, Dynasty wide receiver 1 or 2, depending on what day it is, I guess. I see a lot of teams that maybe looking to move off of Jamar Chase, especially if it's like a rebuilding team. He's one of the first assets you think of to move off at peak value and try and get a few different bits to help improve an overall roster. So I just want to know, if you had Chase and you are looking to trade him away, what sort of deal would you look for to move off of him and help your roster? And that can be players, picks, or both.
Mags, are you having this one or am I?
So I had a long sort of think about this one. And I've made a little list of acceptable things that you could trade Jamar Chase for. Okay. So 1, the Hand of Midas. 2, the Philosopher's Stone. 3, Aladdin's Lamp. 4, the Ring of Power. 5, Excalibur. 6, Mjolnir. All 7 Dragon Balls. All 6 Infinity Stones. Or 4 2023 firsts. If anything, that kind of just shows you the power of 2023 firsts, right? I want 6 Infinity Stones. I only want 4 23 firsts. So that's the kind of thing I'm looking for Jamar Chase. And I actually thought as well, I'm actually going to get myself a nice gauntlet for all my 23 firsts, so I'm going to put them all in the little gauntlet.
I love that.
Yeah, you've got us picking up some images in his mind there, Mags. Wow. Paul, you've actually got one, so you must have sold Jamar Chase by the looks of it.
Thanks for Jamar Chase, Mags.
That's awesome. So Paul, if obviously you've sold Chase with what you had in your house, but let's say you was doing a deal that was picks and players moving off of Chase. Is there anything that you would be happy with? Maybe a couple of picks and a
So I was really sensible when I looked at this question, and I actually put down who I would buy, who I would sell him for. So I put together a couple of little things, and what I would try and do is I try and get like maybe a veteran, a rookie / sophomore, and a 23 first. So I would be looking for somebody like a Stephon Diggs or a Keenan Allen. That's that type of player. Maybe like a Treylon Burks or a Brandon Ayuk and a 23 first. And I think that for me, I've got a solid player that I know that can turn up each week. I've got a rookie or a sophomore that I'm like, do you know what? I've got a lot of faith in them for the future, and a 23 first to go and grab another player that I could be like, yeah, do you know what? I'm all in on you. So I was a bit sensible with this question.
Love that. Matt Ali, do you have a lot of Chase? Are you looking to move off of Chase right now, or do you just think keep riding the lightning and see where he takes you?
I'll let Ali take this one first because I don't have many shares of Chase.
Well, no, I don't have a single share of Chase, so I can't move off.
What a rubbish question.
I did know. What about this? There was a trade went down a couple of weeks ago in one of my leagues. It was Chase for T. Higgins, a 23 first and a 23 second. Which side of that argument are you on?
Cheers.
But I thought that was quite close because I really like T. Higgins, so I thought that was rather close to me.
Yeah,
Cheers for me.
I'd probably say it's close. Like we spoke about it before the draft, before Chase was selected. We were all high on T. Higgins, and then Chase came along and ruined that dream. But I think it is tough. He's kind of one of those players where you love to have him, but you also hate it because he's just so valuable. You don't really know what to do. You feel like I've got this elite player. There's only one way that a player can go when the number one in the rankings. There's only one way to go. So it's kind of like you're deciding what you've got to weigh out the production to the value, I feel like. And like Paul touched on, I think if you're a contending team, I'm probably looking to move off of Chase because I feel like there's other players, like you mentioned, people like Stephon Diggs, that can still reach that ceiling, but then you can still add to your team as well, strengthening other areas or get yourself depth. So for me, somebody like Chase is probably the reason why I don't have him, because I feel like once they hit that value, there's only one way it can go. I can't see him getting too much more value currently to where he is. All the things that Mag's listed off just shows just how valuable he is. So I'm kind of with Paul on this one. I think that I'm probably looking to acquire other assets, get maybe somebody that I feel can still have that high ceiling and then address other needs on my roster.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I did a start up earlier on this offseason, took Chase early, took Tom Brady, then he retired. So I was panicking. And the first thing I did was sell Jamar Chase. Yeah. So he's easy. I think he's an easy asset to sell, to be honest, but I can understand as well why you would want to keep him around, because I don't think he's touched the surface yet. Last year, I believe the Bengals were like 31st in pace of play or some stat like that, and just feel that that's got to swing back at some point. And yeah, I think we've only just touched the surface with Chase, but we'll move on to his wide receiver buddy, T. Higgins, and over to you, Matt.
Yeah, like we just touched upon, this is another guy that everyone seems to be on. We love all parts of this offense, really, don't have to what Joe Burrow did. And as I say, T. Higgins, he's now become a hot property as well in terms of dynasty, especially after that fantastic end to the season. Obviously, the performance he put up in the Super Bowl as well. Currently ranked as wide receiver 9 on Keep Trade Cut, but that's despite just looking at his previous 2 finishes in the NFL, wide receiver 24 and wide receiver 28. So still yet to really hit that ceiling that we feel like that he potentially has. So my question over to you guys is, what would you consider a successful season for T. Higgins, given that current value of wide receiver 9?
So I bet Hannah Rowland is really, really enjoying this. Her 2 favorite co-hosts literally sat here bragging about her team the whole time. So to me, I was looking at how people were doing last year, and I think if he could finish around the wide receiver 10 mark, I think that would be a really, really good season for him. You know, I think last year he was 1,091 yards, 6 touchdowns. So that to me is a great start. He can improve that, and where he's going to improve is touchdowns. I don't think Jamar Chase is going to finish with 14 touchdowns next year. I don't. I think he's going to maybe a few are going to
20?
come down. There you go.
Yeah, 24.
Just playing.
I think he'll get a few bit of touchdown regression, and I think a few of them are going to go T. Higgins' way. and I think T. Higgins is going to finish. I reckon he'll finish the season with about 1,100, 1,200 yards, 9, 10 touchdowns, and I think that'll put him anywhere in between wide receiver 8 to sort of 12 area, and I think that to me is a great season for him.
Mags, is there a season you'd consider really poor, like outside of top 20? Would that get you worried longer term, thinking about, wow, he's got all this potential. He's ranked in dynasty top 10 in a lot of places. Would wide receiver 20 or less really put you off, or are you just going to stick with age and the talent will play through in the end?
Yeah, there's a very slight part of me is thinking there might be a little bit of like Terry McLaurin syndrome here with T. Higgins, where Terry McLaurin is sort of constantly ranked in ADP above where he ever finishes in elite in the season. So there is a slight danger that T. Higgins could be like the next version of that, where he's, not finishing very high, and yet because he was young, he's sort of being taken up there. And Terry McLaurin obviously getting on a bit now, so his ADP is starting to drop. But I also think he's just a very, very good player, and he's linked in with that. I think he's a better player than Terry McLaurin. Yes. I would be buying T. Higgins now. I think, especially we just talked about Jamar Chase. All of going for all of you have to get all 7 Horcruxes to get Jamar Chase and all that, right? That was another one I didn't put in. So the value of Jamar Chase might offset that value of T. Higgins, maybe very slightly, where people might think he's not going to get that share, and look at that. You can use those kind of things to your advantage. You're like, oh, he finished his wide receiver 20-something last year and the year before, so you might be able to use that to try and sneakily buy him. So I'm a believer in T. Higgins. I think he'll have a good year. Maybe not quite top 10 like Paul was thinking, but I think he could get into top 15.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just come to Ali and Matt just to wrap up on T. Higgins. What value do you have on him? What would you be looking to sell him? But I think the real question is, are you concerned if he does leave the Bengals in a couple of years' time? His contract's up in 2 years. They'll be close to re-signing Burrow and Chase. Would you be worried if he ended up on another team? Obviously, it's miles away, but just hypothetically.
For me, I agree, because I don't think that they can sign all three players, because they're both going to have. I mean, Joe Burrow could set the market for quarterbacks if he carries on his ascent, and then Jamar Chase is going to get ridiculous sums. They're going to have to think about that when they come to thinking about T. Higgins, whether they're going to re-sign him or not. So I think it is a definite question. I just love what T. Higgins done in the Super Bowl. If you remember, he was 100 yards and he got the 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase didn't have any touchdowns in the Super Bowl. So I loved his usage. He's my wide receiver 7, actually, ahead of Jalen Waddle and players like that. So I'm obviously very high on him. I am expecting big things from T. Higgins this year, but it is worth noting if he has a finish of, say, wide receiver 19, 20 or less, there is a few concerns about what his ceiling can actually be in Dynasty. I obviously think he's a fantastic player, but he's in a perfect offense and he should be thriving. So I'm expecting top 15 finish, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's what it's funny that we're talking about all these players in such glowing terms, and then we kind of knocked Joe Burrow at the start, didn't we? Saying that he might struggle to get in that top, but then we're saying T. Higgins could be top 10 potentially. Jamar Chase number 1. It's definitely an exciting offense, but I feel like currently is in that ideal situation. What Burrow did last year and what the Bengals were able to do, kind of elevated the entire team. I just worry if there's a bit of regression from Joe Burrow. I feel like what he did last year was amazing, but can he keep that up is the next question. So then you've got to think what part of this offense is going to take a step back. And while I love T. Higgins and also Jamar Chase, I feel like that connection that Burrow and Chase have got, we know that they played together at LSU. You've seen all the memes that Joe Burrow, F it, I'll throw it up there, and Chase will come down with it at the other end. So I feel like there's that real connection between those two, and that's where I have slight concerns with T. Higgins. But in terms of what he is as a player, the talent that he's got, I think he's right up there. I feel like now he's currently undervalued, really, given the talent that he has anyway. The concern is, though, like you touched upon, if he does leave in a few years' time, this is an ideal situation, and we know that there's plenty of teams that would not be ideal for T. Higgins, and they tend to be the teams that are going to look for wide receivers, teams that need help. So that's when my concerns come, but yet that's still a couple of years away. So for right now, I'm happy to take him where he's going. Even wide receiver 9, I'm still happy to take him as maybe my wide receiver 2 on my roster.
Yeah, we've spoke pretty positively about the 4 guys to begin, the Bengals. We'll now come to you, Ali, for the tight end and see if we can keep on theme or not.
So I'm actually going to change up my question slightly because I think there might be a not a very good answer coming out here. But is there any interest coming from the tight end room for the Bengals? We obviously know it's a high-flying offense and there's plenty of touchdowns to go around, but you've got Hayden Hurst moving over there, obviously a former first-round pick. They've got Drew Sample as well as the other tight end to note. But I obviously think your answer is going to be no. So if it is, what is your tight end strategy heading into this season? If you were doing a startup, like say this off season, what is your tight end strategy going forward?
So the answer is no, but sort of. So Hayden Hurst is incredibly unlucky. So he's obviously drafted by the Ravens, and then here's Mark Andrews, and he's like, fine, I'll go to the Falcons. It's like, here's Kyle Pitts. So if anything, I'm looking at the next tight end that the Bengals draft, and I'm going to try and get as many of them as I can because it seems to be his luck. I think Hayden Hurst is actually a sneaky pick for, like, say you have to roster like a third tight end. I don't think there's anything wrong with getting Hayden Hurst. CJ Uzama finished as tight end. Well, he finished as tight end 20, but it was on sleeper. But he's really tight end 19 because Taysom Hill was in there. So I think Hayden Hurst is a better player than CJ Uzama. So there's every chance he might finish as like a top 15 tight end. So if he's your third tight end in your team, sure, why not take a shot on him? But for the same sort of price, you might be able to get somebody like a Gerald Everett that has that higher kind of upside, that higher kind of ceiling. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. If you're looking at your second or third tight ends, just at least pick someone that you think has a chance to, get those touchdowns and get those high ceilings. I think Hayden Hurst might be solid, might get you 7-8 points a game. If he scores a touchdown, maybe a bit more. But yeah, I would kind of avoid him unless you're being very, very conservative. My tight end strategy generally is you've got to get one of those top guys. I've got a lot of TJ Hawkinson, for example. I think he's great. But yeah, you want Mark Andrews, you want even Travis Kelce, you still want Travis Kelce. You want one of those top guys. You don't want to be stuck with Hayden Hurst as your tight end number one.
What about you, Paul? You got any?
I'm exactly the same. Wrote down, do they mean anything? No, they don't. So, great question. My tight end strategy has changed. I was always one that would fade tight end and just be like, I'm not reaching for one of these guys early. I want to build my running back core or my wide receiver core. And then I did the draft strategy articles I did, and I fell in love with the tight end early one. So I'm all for getting an elite tight end in the first few rounds now. So if I can get a Kyle Pitts, Kelce, Andrews, Kittle, one of them, then I'm leaving that draft really happy.
Yeah.
Then he's very happy. Good stuff. And what about Matt Ali, yourself? You're tight end lovers, aren't you? So
I'll let Matt have this one as the Mr. Tight End Premium.
Loves a tight end.
Any league's a tight end premium now, I'm in. Yeah, I think what Paul just said kind of nailed it for me. We know the position advantage that you get if you take one of these early tight ends. So I tend to be one of those guys that goes for the early tight ends if possible. But then on the flip side, I then target the lesser ones. I don't really aim for that middle range of tight ends because I feel like beyond the top 4 or 5 tight ends, anyone can really reach that top 6, top 7, top 8 potential. So I then begin to start fading position. And I think somebody like Hayden Hurst is really interesting because when you're looking for these later dart throws on tight ends, the one thing you need to be looking for is the situation that they're in, really, because as we say, they're all kind of those don't really want them players. But if you're in that right situation, that's where you can hit that ceiling. So somebody like Hayden Hurst on this offense that we've just bigged up for the last half an hour and saying how great it is, I feel like there's opportunities there for him, the amount of times they're going to throw the ball. So this is one of those tight ends that I would potentially target really late on in my drafts that has that shot of hitting, like Mag said, getting into that top 15, top 12 maybe.
Yeah, agreed. Well, go on, Ali.
So if I was playing best ball, like startup or whatever, then Hayden Hurst is someone you can take in the very sort of last round that could get, for 1 week, could have 2 touchdowns in a week and then help win you that week. So, yeah.
Read my mind, Ali. So that brings us to the end of the Bengals. We're going to move on to the second team. Our good friend Tom will be loving this one. It's the Baltimore Ravens. And I'll kick us off at QB. Lamar Jackson. Keep trade cut his QB 5. He's going behind guys like Burrow, like Kyler. I just want to throw a question out to you guys about his talent and his expiring contract after this season. I think him and his mum are negotiating that deal, so that should be quite fun. With all that sort of baked in and considering everything as a whole, where do you think he should be ranked? His QB 5 fair?
Yeah, it's fair because he's always got his rushing upside. If you know what I mean. What year was it? I think it was the year he got MVP, where he was over 1,000 yards rushing. And any QB that's going to get you over 1,000 yards rushing is worthy of being ranked that high. I don't rank him that high. I think I have him ranked at 7, and I think when he gets his contract, I think they try and protect him a little bit more, and I don't think they'll rush him quite as much. And I think J.K. Dobbins coming back this year off his injury and the Gus bus, and I think they don't need to rush Lamar Jackson as much as what they do at the moment. And I think once they start paying him and they start realizing that actually if he goes down, we're still going to be paying this amount of money, I think they'll protect him a little bit more. So for me, I think his rushing upside will be capped at about sort of 600, 650 yards. I think that would be about as much as I'd expect from Lamar. So I think 7 is about as high as I'm going to go with him, because he just can't throw the ball as well as the people ahead of him, like Kyler, the legend. I think he could rush for 500 yards, but also throw 4,000 yards and 35 touchdowns. So give me Kyler over Lamar all day long.
In the Cardinals hoodie. Oh, look at that. Mags, you touched upon Lamar a little bit earlier, but he's in that 7. How much do you factor in contracts into, not even QB, but I guess any player? Do you look at expiring people and get that bit extra worry?
Sometimes, but for Lamar Jackson, not really, because no matter, say Lamar Jackson doesn't play for the Ravens, in the upcoming future, wherever he goes, like, they know who Lamar Jackson is. They're not going to have him be a pocket passer. Like, whatever team he ends up signing for, he's going to be still the same kind of player. He's still going to rush a lot. He's still going to play the same. You don't sign Lamar Jackson and completely change the way Lamar Jackson plays. So I wouldn't be too worried about a contract situation. I wouldn't be too worried about where he ends up playing. I think he's still going to be Lamar Jackson at the end of the day. And something I've been trying to think about more and more is I had obviously friend of the show, Dave Wright, on my podcast, and he talked about thinking about risk differently in Dynasty. And he's like, you need to think about it more about the things like, what do you know rather than what don't you know? Because what don't you know hasn't happened yet. It was kind of hard to understand. I'm sort of trying to get my head around it. So I'm trying to think about, what do we know about Lamar Jackson? We do know he's going to rush a lot. We do know he has the capability to score all those touchdowns. And we do know that he has the capability to be like the MVP, the best player in the league. And it's tricky to put aside those things that we don't know. Like, we don't know, is his ACL going to blow out one day and that rushing floor is going to fall? We don't know, is the contract situation going to hold those things up? So I'm trying to follow Dave's advice and look at the things that we do know rather than the things we don't know a bit more with Lamar. So yeah, I like Lamar.
Yeah, I think Dave Wright's big on that risk is an opportunity to dive in, and you've got that chance to get bigger outcomes when there's risk involved. So definitely worth considering, depending on how risky you are as a person. And we kicked off with a QB that's a bit like a running back, and now we're going to move on to a running back.
Yeah, so we're going to go over to J.K. Dobbins, the guy that you feel like is going to be the starter next year. Obviously missed the 2021 season due to that injury. But as I say, he should come back as the lead back next season with Gus Edwards doing the same thing, coming off an injury. The one thing that people seem to worry about with J.K. Dobbins, and I feel like it's something that's maybe worth looking into, is the amount of targets that they get, the running backs over at Baltimore. Just looking at last year, they acquired 14% of the total team targets, which is one of the lowest in the league. And I'm just interested to know what you two feel about. Is that a concern for you regarding Dobbins? Does it limit his fantasy upside, the fact that he's not really seeing those targets? We know how valuable that targets can be in fantasy for running backs.
I think the numbers might be a bit skewed as well, because I think last year you three were the running back committee for the Ravens, if I remember correctly. So I think, what they were playing with is it's kind of hard whenever you have, Vonta Freeman as the guy you're having to throw the ball for too. So I think Dobbins is much better at receiving than that. He's sort of, in college, he kind of averaged just over 20 receptions, which isn't, great. You're kind of looking for at least double of that to be your high-end sort of receiving PPR running back. But, at the same time, last year, Freeman did get 190 yards receiving, which is, more than, players that finished much higher than him. It's more than, I was shocked with this, it was more than Elijah Mitchell, which I didn't see coming. It was obviously more than Derrick Henry. It was more than Harris over at New England. It was more than Nick Chubb. And it wasn't that far away from Dalvin Cook, who are all, sort of higher end running backs last year. So I think if J.K. Dobbins can get more receiving yards than Freeman did, which I think he will, plus he's a much better player overall, there's no reason why he can't be finishing up around your areas with like Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, or Elijah Mitchell next year. And I think now, especially with, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, with Hollywood Brown leaving as well, there's a lot of empty targets there. And I think, I think he's good enough to take up some of those targets. Maybe not a lot, but some of them.
Indeed. Paul, have you got any concerns with the injury? The fact that he's coming back from an injury in that backfield?
No, I've got no concerns about the injury, but I do have concerns about the targeting of the running back, and I do think that's what keeps him out. That keeps him out of the RB1 for me. I think he's just on the cusp of being an RB1, and I think the only reason he's not in there is because of the pass catching side of things. And I look at all the people in my RB1 rankings, and I think all of them, they're all good pass catching backs, apart from, as mentioned, Nick
James
Chubb.
Conner.
Love it.
Thanks, Mags. Love you too. But, no, he's fair enough. He's my RB1 next season. But no, I do think it is a bit of a worry that they don't really throw the ball to Dobbins. And I know you just mentioned, Mags, that there are some vacated targets. So, maybe I do need to go back and have a look to see if he will get some pass catching work. But I can't see it. I just can't see them using him like they would sort of, I don't know, an Austin Eckler or something like that. Somebody who is just on the cusp of RB1 as well. Well, he is in the RB1, but I can't see me putting him over somebody like that because I don't see him getting the work that he's going to get. So,
yeah, and I'll just quickly come back to Matt and Ali just to wrap up on the running back room. Tyler Beatty, is it a good landing spot really, or is it not?
I'd say it's potentially a good landing spot. Obviously, we know that the two injuries to Edwards and Dobbins, there's potential there that if neither or if one of them isn't able to suit up week one, then there's a chance that Beatty gets that opportunity. But like I've touched upon, I think it's going to take injuries to the starters or struggling to come back from the injuries in this regard. So I don't think it's the greatest landing spot. But on the flip side, and this kind of applies to J.K. Dobbins as well, there's kind of that flip-off between what we've touched about with the receptions, but this offense is built for running the ball. We know it from the quarterback position, but also it helps the running back position when you've got Lamar Jackson. As that quarterback, it opens up way bigger gaps than what any other offense would, just because they have to pay attention to Lamar Jackson as well. So the offense itself is a great landing spot, but I feel like that the depth chart is kind of against Bader.
Yeah, and for me, I actually love the landing spot, and where you're able to get him in fourth round, fifth round of rookie drafts, They've just haven't they just signed Mike Davis as a, and I think that I think that is more to do with the concerns about the injury than anything else, than them thinking that he's a good running back. So potentially it could be good. Maybe those two are further behind than we think. And there's possibility for Beatty. I love the Lander spot rather than him going somewhere where he might have opportunity, but they don't like running the ball or they don't run it very well. I think the Ravens, obviously, they run the ball fantastically well. So I think for where you're taking him in the rookie drafts, he's absolutely worth that shot.
We're going to quickly flip it back to you, Ali, for your question on the new alpha wide receiver, or is that Mark Andrews?
Yeah, well, it's probably Mark Andrews, but Rashad Bateman is a clear big winner of the Marquise Brown trade. So just a quick question for you two. Were you high on Rashad Bateman coming out as a rookie? Did you like what you saw from last season, and what do you think his ceiling can be in 2022?
So do you know who the big winner was from the Marquise Hollywood Brown trade? Marquise Hollywood Brown.
Oh, no.
How have we managed to change talking about the Ravens and Bengals into Paul just talking about the Cardinals?
So I thought I'd get it in before Mags would throw that at me. I wasn't that high on Bateman coming out of college, but I do think he's been given an opportunity now. I can see the Ravens bringing in a vet wide receiver as well. I think T. Strack is petitioning for Will Fuller to be brought in there, isn't he? I can see them bringing him, but looking at Brown's numbers last year, and if Bateman can do anything like that's a solid wide receiver 2 season. And I think if I can pick up Bateman anywhere in drafts at the moment, I am picking him up where I can, because he's a sneaky play, and I think he's valued quite low, and he's somebody that he could be, if they don't bring in another veteran wide receiver, then he is easily the number 2 receiver on that team,
Mm-hmm.
So, Mags, if they did sign Will Fuller, is that a good signing for Bateman? Is Fuller a good enough player to take too much away from him, or is it actually a nice fit, the fact that he's running up the field for the few games he does and creating a bit of space underneath for Bateman to eat?
Yeah, I think if they sign Fuller, it doesn't take away from Bateman too much. I think Fuller will just kind of be the guy to stretch the field and hopefully leave a bit more space open for Bateman through to the middle. And I really like Bateman. He's someone I was quite high on before. I've got quite a few shares of him, and I would just almost expect him to slot right in that wide receiver 2 group that Hollywood Brown was in before. I wouldn't be shocked to see Bateman to slot right in there and finish very similar position to where Hollywood Brown finished last year. I think he's probably just as good, maybe not quite as electric, but probably just as good as an overall player as Hollywood Brown is. So yeah, I like Bateman. I think he's going to have a pretty solid season. Not going to light the world on fire, but he's someone that you might be happy enough to put in your flex spot or have as an option coming off the bench if you need.
Good, and we'll keep at the wide receiver spot. Obviously, Hollywood Brown's been traded. There's not really much depth at that wide receiver 2 spot. So do you guys have any interest in players like Devin Duvernay, Tylan Wallace, or do you think that they'll add a veteran like a Fuller, like a T.Y. Hilton, and that'll be the end of Duvernay and Wallace hype?
Well, first of all, I know Matt is definitely saying this.
No, I know where this is going.
How dare you leave out James Prochet?
How dare you?
He always reminds me of that Friends episode when Joey's like, "It's Pusha." Almost reminds me of that. But yeah, I mean, overall, outside of Bateman, I'm not too interested in too many of those guys. James Prochet is the only one of those guys who's got over 5 receptions in a game before. Duvernay kind of gets 2 or 3 receptions a game, doesn't really do anything special. Wallace has got 2 receptions total, in his career in the NFL. So, I mean, it's hard to say, how can you really put your stamp of approval on any of those guys? I mean, one of them will be the wide receiver 2, which, sounds good in reality, but in reality, the Ravens are thinking, run the ball with the running back, run the ball with Lamar, throw it to Mark Andrews, throw it to Bateman, throw it out of bounds and try rushing again, throw it to the running back, and then throw it to the running back too. So it's option number 7, really, not option number 2. So, yeah, while it sounds nice, wide receiver 2, it's not really worth investing in.
How about you, Paul? Any interest in any of these guys?
No, not really. Not really. It was really tough. I was looking into them. I was like, oh, maybe I can find some way that I really like them, and there just isn't. Just isn't like you said, Mags. They're going to rush the ball, and all of that, And if I'm honest, like I said, I think Bateman's going to be your second receiver on that team. Mark Andrews is your first. Then you got Bateman as your second, and I think if they do bring in Will Fuller, he's going to be third. So these guys are potentially going to be fourth and maybe even the fifth reception choice on that team. And they don't throw it that much. I think I've seen the best season Lamar's had was 400 targets. You know what I mean? You sort of go, you're the fifth reception in a team that are only throwing the ball 400 times. You're not getting that many, are you? You're not even worth a flex spot, really, are you? Just no. It was an ugly question, that one, an ugly backroom.
And I've come to Ali and Matt to wrap up on the wide receivers, including Bateman. Is there anybody that you like at wide receiver on the Ravens? We know Matt's going to say Brochet. I can see him laughing already. But
we'll let Ali go first then.
Other than Bateman, no, definitely not interested. At the end of the day, this is the wide receiver graveyard, so I'm not interested in. I hope Tom's going to watch this back, but apart from Bateman, who I think is going to get possibly overdrafted just because of the opportunity that he's got, I'm not really interested. I'm very interested in Mark Andrews because he's the wide receiver 1 of this team. He's going to get an absolute ton of targets and loads of touchdowns again this year. So interested in him, but not anybody else.
Yeah. Do I need to say it? Mags has already touched upon it. James Brochet is the one. If I'm targeting anybody, I'm grabbing him. I can guarantee you now that he's sat on your waivers in the league that you're in. I know someone's going to say it's where he deserves to be, but it's not. He should be picked up off waivers. If you have that depth, if you have that kind of roster size where you can add him, I'm adding him because currently, as it stands, it's easy to say if this happens, if that happens, but as it stands, he's currently there. He's going to be the wide receiver 2, I feel personally. People talk about Devin Duvernay. He's the guy that was more special teams. I believe he got into the Pro Bowl based on what he did on special teams. And then, like Mag touched upon, Wallace is somebody that's it kind of slipped in the NFL draft, didn't he? I believe he went late on in day 3, and then yet to really see anything from him. But James Brochet, he's had 2 games really where he had the opportunity to see some targets. In both those games, he got 74 and 75 receiving yards. So just shows if he gets the opportunity, I feel like he can step in. So he's somebody, if anybody, I'll be targeting. You can get him for nothing, basically. So yeah, he's the one that stands out to me.
Good stuff. And we're going to finish on probably the best player on the Ravens, Mark Andrews, and it's a tight end question and it's landed on Matt, so that's a perfect ending to the Ravens, I guess.
Yeah, like it touched upon, Kev, Mark Andrews ended the Travis Kelce streak that year after year of being a tight end 1 in fantasy. Mark Andrews finally dethroned him, and now he's cemented himself as one of the top fantasy tight ends in Dynasty. So I'm interested to know, kind of circling back to what we spoke about earlier about your draft strategy. How early would you be willing to take him in your startup drafts?
So I really like this question because it was really nice because I went through the Bengals questions and we were like, oh my God, this player's amazing, blah, 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 and everything like that. And then we finally get to the Ravens and it's like, oh, I don't like this one. I don't like this one. So it's really nice that I get to sit here now and be like, this player's amazing. I love Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews is somebody that I'm targeting wherever I can. Okay, as he finished last season, I believe it was the wide receiver 6. And for me, if I can pick that up, if I can get him in maybe the 5th round of a tight end premium league, and I can get somebody who could potentially finish that high as a wide receiver, I'm happy taking him over the wide receivers because I can still get very good wide receivers in later rounds to fill them spots and dominate in the tight end position. So for me, I'm happy round 3, round 4, I'm happy to pull the trigger there. in a super flex 12-team super flex team, I always go back-to-back QBs the first 2 rounds because they are worth gold in a 12-team super flex team. They're worth gold, but round 4, round 3, round 4, I'm happy. Mark Andrews is it. Bam! I'm pulling the trigger. Let's go.
And Mags, I've got the ultimate question for the Chiefs fan: Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce. Who you got?
He's not liking this one.
He's been slamming Paul all morning about his Cardinals loving.
If I just sit really still, you might think my internet's like gone off. Yeah, you have to. It has to be Mark Andrews, right? You can't not take like Mark Andrews at this stage in Dynasty. Like he's got those extra years, and Mark Andrews got the same amount of points as Tyreek Hill did last year in non-premium leagues.
Wow.
So yeah, like just like Paul was saying, it's if you translated those points, into like the wide receiver position, then you're absolutely laughing. And the advantage that you get because there aren't that many premium tight ends to have a wide receiver 1 playing and like have an extra wide receiver 1 playing in your team. Got more points than Mike Evans, got more points than Stephon Diggs, got the same amount of points as Tyreek Hill. How can you not love Mark Andrews? And that really just sets you up for a great season right away, for someone you can just plug in and just not worry about. And yeah, he does have those extra couple of years on Travis Kelce. But whatever he's done, 5 number 1 seasons in a row. Let's talk.
Love it. Love the fire then. And Alan, Mark Andrews is a guy that's sort of, you've warmed to him over time, I guess. I know you used to slam him, and I actually used to slam him as well. I called him a catfish a few years back, so I felt that he was pretending to be something he's not. But yeah, he's really backed it up now and performed at a top level. So where are you two on Mark Andrews in Dynasty?
Matt, yeah, this one.
Go on then. It's a tight end, Ali. I might as well take the lead. Yeah, I've put him up as my tight end 3 currently in my dynasty rankings. I didn't match it down at 4, but Kev's brutal assassination basically of where I had him ranked. I had him at 4 below Travis, below it. Not Kelce, Kittle, sorry. Yeah, Kittle. And Kev slammed me for that one. So I bumped him up to tight end 3, and rightfully so, I think. Like we've touched upon throughout this, he's going to be that number 1 there. Despite having that wide receiver label next to his name, he is the wide receiver 1 on this offense. And yeah, it's hard not to be excited by him. We've seen that connection year after year that he's got with the quarterback, Lamar Jackson. So yeah, rightfully so, he should be tight end 3, and probably he should be a little higher, maybe over Travis Kelce. Personally, I've still got Kelce just a touch above him. I know he's getting up there in age, but like Mag said, if you can do it 5 years on the bounce, and then last year still finished tight end 2, so it's nothing to get too overly excited about. So yeah, he's still well up there in my dynasty rankings.
Yeah, famously a couple of years ago, 18 months ago, called him a non-elite tight end, and I've publicly apologised to Tom for that label. But yeah, he's my tight end 2 in Dynasty, and obviously Kyle Pitts is in a tier of his own at the minute, but just fantastic and just exciting. I think he could easily repeat as the tight end 1 again this year, just because without Hollywood Brown, even if they bring in Fuller, is he going to hurt his pinky again and go off for the season? He's going to get a ton of work. He's going to be one of the safest tight ends you can take. I think I took him in the third round of the startup that we done on your show, Mags. I think I took him at the 2-3 turn, and just felt really good about it. The fact that you haven't got to think about tight end for another 10, 12, 13 rounds. So yeah, I really like Mark Andrews. I've always been high on Mark Andrews, so we'll just end it with that.
That's quality. So that wraps up the Ravens as well, and it wraps up our first part of the stream where we've had the Wildcard Rewind boys on. Thank you for kicking off the Streamathon in fantastic fashion. We had plenty of laughs along the way. We had a few props in our stream as well. So if you get a chance to check it out, that'll give you a laugh as well. Paul, Max, is there anything you'd like to plug before you go? Where can the listeners find you, and what have you got in the works?
Yeah, so just guys, thanks again for having us on and having us the first ones come on. First thing I do just want to mention is, if you're listening and you haven't already, just make sure you're giving even a small donation to the Mind charity. You can find all those things over at the guys' Twitter account. It's a brilliant cause, fantastic cause for everyone suffering with mental health, which is such a big thing at the moment. So that would be the main thing I would plug. Any other stuff, you can find me at Mags on Sport, find me at the Dynasty Hot Seat Show. But yeah, the main thing here is get donating to this amazing charity.
Yeah, just to repeat what Mag said, go give the guys a donation. 16 hours is a long time. We all love our fantasy football. We all love talking fantasy football, but 16 hours is a long time. A lot of prep and a lot of effort's gone into making this all work and everything, and getting guests and the right times and everything. Me and Mags only had to prepare for an hour. I can't imagine what you guys have had to do to prepare for 16 hours. So, anything is just something just to show these guys the appreciation and show Mind support the help that they need and everything like that. So, I don't even want to plug my Twitter. Just look after the guys and go and donate, please.
Yeah, you can find Paul at Mind Charity. But serious note, lads, thank you for kicking us off, and make sure if you're listening, you check these guys out as well. They're going to produce some fantastic content for the Wildcard, but also they're producing fantastic content right now for Dynasty Hot Seat and for 5 Yard Rush. Thank you.
Cheers, guys.
Speaking of 5 Yard Rush, I'll pass it over to Matt.
Look at that. Kev couldn't wait to boot those two just straight out. No messing, just booting.
Didn't even give him a chance to say bye.
No, but it leads us on nicely now. We've obviously covered one side of the AFC North. We're going to move on to the two teams that we've yet to talk about. And with that, we're going to bring on two fantastic guests to come and help us along the way. So I'll introduce Rich and Liam, two guys that work over at 5 Yard Rush, also hosts of the 5 Yard Dynasty podcast. So if you can, go and check that out. But to get on with things, how are you doing today, lads? Are you all right?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thanks for having us on. Incredible cause, and yeah, happy to be on and hopefully talking some rubbish about two terrible teams.
Rich already on the show and throwing shade 30 seconds in. How are you boys doing after your first hour?
Well, we're only an hour in, aren't we? So we can't complain too much because there's still plenty more to go just yet. But yeah, obviously,
are all three of you doing all 16 hours?
No.
Okay. No.
We're starting as a 3 and we're going to turn it into a 2 after this one, and then back to a 3 to finish off. So
fair enough.
A little bit of breaks for us. So it's not.
That makes a lot of sense.
But yeah, we might as well crack on and get on with the first team we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the Cleveland Browns. Obviously starting at the quarterback position. So Ali, do you want to kick things off?
Yes, we'll talk about Deshaun Watson. Obviously hit the headlines for the last year, I suppose, and now he's finally landed in Cleveland. So just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on where does he sit in your guys' dynasty ranks, and do you think that he can reach the heights that he reached with the Texans, i.e. 3 consecutive years finished inside the top 5? So are you boys really high on Watson going forward, and do you think he can reach them heights that he reached with the Texans?
Yeah, I think if I can dive in and take that first, I think I was I tried to separate Deshaun Watson the person to Deshaun Watson the fantasy asset, and perhaps I can be honest and say he never left my top 8 even through the last kind of 2 years and everything that was going on. So yeah, I've always kind of maintained that when he's on the field, and I've always believed even if he ended up going to prison, he'd still return to the NFL at some point. And I think when he's on the field, this is a guy that was the QB2, if we remember 2 years ago before he went off in terms of ADP. He is an elite producer, and I think that there is no way that he's not going to be a top 5 producer over the next few years. Certainly, the only concern is this potential looming suspension that's sort of hanging over him at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to pass that over to Rich straight away because I know that he loves talking a bit of Deshaun Watson, and he loves having a little rant about how low people have him ranked. I'm in a similar tier as Rich, so I've got him as my tier 3 within the QB. So Mahomes, Allen in a tier of their own, and Lamar, Kyler, and Herbert in a tier, and then it's Burrow, Dak, and Watson, and I've got him at 8. QB wise. The only non-QBs I have above him in Dynasty are Jonathan Taylor, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson. So that kind of pushes him to the back end of the first round in a normal 12-team league. But I'm not like Rich. I kind of dropped him in my rankings last year with all the question marks around his future. But going forward, I don't think a huge suspension is coming in just from how this legal situation has played out. It's taken its time, basically. And if he does get a suspension, which I should hope he does from some of the updates that we're getting, I still don't think the NFL are going to suspend him for more than one season. So when you're talking about a previously QB 3 or 4 in Dynasty that hasn't really aged in the past 2 years, because it's the quarterback position. I'm not going to set Rich off on a age in the quarterback position rant, but really that the quarterback position doesn't need the 26, 28 age drop off. I think Watson's going to fly forward as the player in future seasons.
Got to think as well with Watson, he's had plenty of massages, so he'll be fresh, won't he?
Nice and limber.
Yeah, so Alan, Kev, what's your feelings on Deshaun Watson? Obviously, we know that there's still that looming thing of potentially getting a suspension in this upcoming season. But have you moved him about in your dynasty rankings? Did you drop him? Was you like Rich? Did you keep him true throughout the entire process? What are your two feelings on Deshaun Watson?
Go, Ali, go.
Okay, well, Rich isn't going to like it, but I did drop him down just because I tend to do that. I've done it with Michael Thomas. I will put him back when I see him back on the field. But I have put Deshaun Watson back, and he's my quarterback 7. He's in my quarterback tier 2 with Kyler Murray, Lamar, and Joe Burrow. And I'm very happy to have him as my quarterback 1 in a dynasty league. I think. Is there talk that it might be next year he gets suspended and he might play all of this year? Which, again, that's good news for if you own him as the player. I think he's someone that doesn't necessarily need the best weapons to produce fantasy, and obviously with linking up with Amari Cooper, I think that's going to be a pretty decent match and someone that you can stack in dynasty. So yeah, I'm all in for Deshaun Watson. I wasn't always all in. I did move him down, but you've got to be sensible, and he's in that elite tier. I think if he's on the field and he plays a full year, he's got to finish as the top 7 quarterback. So you have to rank him as such.
Yeah, I'm going to get shouted at as well. I did drop him in season to, I think, around about QB 14, QB 12, 14, that range, just because I wasn't sure what was going to play out with the Texans. The fact that they sat him all season, he wasn't suspended. I didn't know if they were going to keep doing that and teaching him a lesson as such. But as soon as we got the move to the Browns, he was back up. He's now my QB 6, above Joe Burrow actually as well. I think I'm happy taking Watson at the end of the first, early second in a startup, and I did that in my most recent startup. I think he's the rubber ring that's going to sort of save the people that want to go QB early and they're at the back of the first. And it's because it's kind of too early to be taking a punt on a rookie, or maybe maybe you are ageist like a lot of people, you don't want to take a Stafford or a Russell Wilson there. So I think Watson is an ideal guy to target at the back of the first in startups. And I'll pass back to you, Rich, because you was ready to shout, I think.
I'm not going to shout either of you. I think, I completely get it. I'm perhaps slightly riskier when it comes to quarterbacks. Hence why I was quite happy keeping him that high, because I think the potential payoff was always massive. But I've got a slight, I don't know if I'd say it's a conspiracy theory about this potential looming suspension. And obviously, I don't know if you saw when the contract extension got released. Basically, the Browns and Watson have tweaked his contract so that he's got a minimal base salary this year. So that the idea being that if he gets suspended, he'd only get fined like $1 million rather than potentially like 40 or 50 million. So my kind of conspiracy theory is that the NFL have realised this and so are therefore not going to suspend him this year, and then therefore then going to suspend him next year, almost as a you tried to play us and we're now going to play you kind of thing. So I reckon that's why all the talk is now, he won't get suspended until 2023, because then he'll get fined properly rather than only getting fined $1 million.
Yeah,
Love
no, I
that.
think definitely a great point. And as we say, the short-term future is still yet to be seen. But I think long-term, I think we can all agree that we know Deshaun Watson is an elite fantasy quarterback, and when he is back playing, he's going to be right up there in terms of fantasy. So with that, we're going to now move on to the running back position. Kev, over to you.
Yeah, Nick Chubb is a guy that I've never really warmed to. He's running back 11 at Keep Trade Cut. He's going to be 27 in season. He has performed, though. I mean, last 3 years, he's been top 12 in fantasy points per game, which is running back 1, which you're not just going to fade him for that reason. But I know you did a recent article on this, Rich, so I'm sure you've got some thoughts on Nick Chubb in your startups. But in a neutral startup where you're not looking to sort of win now or rebuild straight away a productive struggle, I just want to know what both your guys' thoughts are on what sort of running back range you'd be willing to take him in a startup, just on a normal strategy.
Go for it, Liam.
So for the ranks wise, I've got him as RB 10 or 11, depending on whether Hall is involved. So if Breece Hall is involved, I've got him higher. So that's where the difference is there. I'd assume Keep Trade Cut has Breece Hall involved in their ranking, so I'll put him at RB 11 as in Chubb. I understand the concern. He's not a sexy pick. He's not the most explosive guy. You're not going to see all these highlights of him absolutely bursting and outrunning everyone, every single play. You're not going to see that from Chubb, but he's one of the most consistent points gatherers in the league at the running back position. Don't forget that he's also not getting much passing work because of Kareem Hunt being there, and he's still putting up these RB1 numbers. Yes, I understand the age concern there. He's 26 this year, so I get where you're coming from with that, but at the same time, a lot of the running backs right now, if you're looking at the running back landscape, you're either going for a Javonte Williams, Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris in the top 5 to 7, where they're all first, second, maybe third year guys, or you're looking at 26, 27-year-olds that the dynasty community kind of thinks is old at that point. And I get the point that there's a lot of research around running back drop-off, and that does tend to creep in and become more likely around 26 onwards. But at the moment, you don't really have a choice between Kamara, who's 26. You've got Christian McCaffrey. I'm not saying all these guys are in the same level as points-wise, but at the moment, after you get after the first 5 or 6 guys, the rest of the running back room, before you get into your running back dead zone, are 26, 27-year-olds. So that's why in dynasty startups at the moment, you're probably seeing a lot more wide receivers go early, because people don't want to spend these early picks on the running backs. And that's where I see Chubb slip. And even though I have Chubb RB11, you're probably getting him in the late third, early fourth round, really, because a lot of wide receivers and quarterbacks are getting pushed up into the first 3-4 rounds.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with a lot of what Liam said. I think, look, if we're talking pure talent, he's arguably a top 3 most talented rusher in the league. I think the question is the receiving usage, and I know that everybody will point to Kareem Hunt and say, well, Kareem Hunt can be cut with no cost to the Browns, so he, that could open up the passing usage. And hinting back to my article that I wrote about, basically when Nick Chubb's played without Kareem Hunt, there's been no difference in receiving usage. So it's not like, I think there's a way that the Browns want to use him, and I think there's a talent level there that they're basically saying he's not a 3-down back, he's not a receiving back. And I think that to me caps that ceiling. I think he is a back-end RB1 on a season-to-season basis, but I don't think he'll ever be a top 5 back. So for me, he's running back 10 for me. I'd take him at the beginning of a 4th. So I've got him 39th overall in terms of my overall ranks. And that's that Superflex tight end premium. I think the interesting thing for me is that you kind of throw him in a tier with a lot of the other aging backs of, if you would say Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry, if you want to throw him in there. Of all of those guys, all of their contracts can be moved on after this season, except Kamara and Chubb. So whilst you're looking at all of those and saying, okay, CMC, Eckler, Kamara, even Mixon, Henry have all got kind of that top 5 upside. Outside of Kamara, all of those, you could be looking at basically one more year of fancy production before they're either cut or, they might not get cut, but there's always that potential there. Whereas Nick Chubb, you can say for sure he is going to be the Browns starting running back for the next 2 seasons, which, okay, I don't personally like going running back early in startups, but if you're spending a top 4 pick, I'd be nervous if I'm not getting at least 2 years on that contract guaranteed.
Yeah, I think you make some great points, Rich. And to be honest, I'm probably lower than both of you guys. I'm going with RB17. I just feel like there's a lot of red flags. I mean, we've touched upon it though. I mean, getting up there in age, while there's other running backs around that area that are obviously up there in age, but as well, this offense has been built to run the ball. Is it now going to change with Deshaun Watson coming in there? If you feel like there's going to be more receiving targets, Nick Chubb, has he really shown that he can be utilising that side of the game like Rich touched upon? Not really. I think he's only had 1 season where he's had over 20 receptions. And I mean, when talking about fantasy upside, if you're getting 20 receptions as your max in a year, it's just offering very little to me in terms of upside. And personally, I'm somebody that gravitates more towards these running backs that are used a little bit more in the receiving game, just because we know how valuable that is to the position in terms of fantasy. So yes, I'm probably the hater out of the group on Nick Chubb, and I better move on before I get any stick. So I'm gonna
sorry, Matt. Can I just jump in there?
No, sorry, Liam. I'm swiftly moving on. No, go on. Of course you can.
I want to try and change your mind. That's the only reason I've jumped in here. In 2019, he had 36 receptions, and that was the only season he played a full season beyond his rookie season. Last year, he had 12 games. 14 games. Sorry, the year before 2020, he had 12 games, and that's why his reception totals are so low, because he's not getting the full season. And I'm not saying that you've got to discount that because he's not playing in games, because while he's not playing in games, he's not earning new points. But I'm trying to push it towards have another look at your rankings. But
I'm gonna have a quick fire back then, because this is just turned into a debate now between me and Liam. But like you just touched upon, if he played those 14 games last season, he had 20 receptions. So if he played 17 and we do the averages, how many receptions are you going to get? It's going to get up to 25, is it? I mean, that's just personally not enough for me to get excited about, really. I mean, an extra 5-6 receptions. I just feel like he's a guy that doesn't see that use in the receiving game. And to be honest, we could look back in a year's time and this could all be irrelevant, because we don't know now. Deshaun Watson there. There could be a change in usage, who knows? But I'm a sucker for the receptions. And what I see on paper is that Nick Chubb doesn't get a lot of those. So I'm now going to swiftly move on before Liam comes back again and has another shot at me. So we're going to move on to the wide receivers, and Amari Cooper, obviously, joining from the Dallas Cowboys. And for argument's sake, Rich made a great point as well about Deshaun Watson playing in 2022. So let's just say that Deshaun Watson plays the full season next year. What do you think his ceiling could now be in this offense alongside Deshaun Watson?
I think wide receiver 1 overall, I think is within his range of outcomes, if I'm being honest. I think I don't think that's where he will finish. That's not me making that prediction, but I think the guy is an elite route runner. He's not got a huge amount of competition for targets in that offense. Would you be shocked if at the end of the year he's in that 160 to 180 target range? I wouldn't be. We've seen that he can get open at will. If he can stay healthy, if Deshaun Watson plays all year, I think the ceiling is, insanely high. You look at last year, he had 96 targets and finished as the wide receiver 28. I mean, if you're potentially doubling that target list, I see no reason why he couldn't be, truly elite.
I'm not going to go as high as Rich with his ceiling. I've got his ceiling around wide receiver 6, like mid to late end wide receiver 1 in total. But I agree with the sentiment. Again, I'm not going to go as high with the target share, but I agree with there not being many targets there. So who is Deshaun Watson going to throw the ball to? I like Cooper as a late round win now kind of guy to pick up. I think he's going a little bit later because of the age and the uncertain situation around Deshaun Watson. And if you're like by the sounds of it, a lot of us on here that think Deshaun Watson is going to play for the majority of this season, if not all of it, then I can't see why Cooper is going where he is right now. I do think that the Watson situation is playing into Cooper's current ADP and trade value. I'd probably put him around 150 targets. I'd probably put him around like what Adams has done in the past few years and stuff along those lines. I wouldn't go up to 160 to 180, Rich, but I can see the argument there. And if he does get to that target share, then I can see wide receiver 3, 4 maybe, or even pushing up to that wide receiver 1 overall as being the ceiling. But the thing about Cooper is I like his floor as well. When he's had decent quarterback play and not had a shambles of an offense, he's been a late round or late wide receiver 1, early wide receiver 2. And I think that's where he's going to slot in this season as well. I think he's just going to be that consistent guy that is there. And that, to me, is where I see him. And his floor's probably around mid wide receiver 2. I don't understand the worry there, to be honest, outside of Watson not playing for the full season, which, by the sounds of it, none of us think that's going to be an option this year.
Yeah, Kev Ali, what's your two feeling? Obviously, Cooper going from Dallas to Cleveland. Do you see that as an upgrade now? He's going to probably, presumably, the clear wide receiver one there. What's your feelings on this move?
Yeah, I think it's a lateral move, personally. I think he's a back-end wide receiver 2. I should probably do more research, if I'm honest, because I'm basing this on a small sample size, but he's burnt me a few times in cold weather. It cost me a few ships, actually. Or definitely one ship because of having an absolute clanger against the Patriots and the Eagles that time of year in December. So, yeah, I do have concerns with the Cleveland weather. The fact that there's been other seasons where it has played a part, but I still think he's worth wide receiver 2, late wide receiver 2. Just the fact that, like Leah mentioned, he is really safe, and like Rich mentioned, there's a ceiling there as well. If he's the alpha, clear alpha in the offense, he's going to get a fair amount of targets, more than he did in Dallas post CD, like he did before CD Lamb. He was right up there, wasn't he? When it was him and Gallup ripping it up.
Yeah, and he's currently going on keep trade cut at wide receiver 31, which is below Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sky Moore, Marquise Brown, and Jerry Jeudy. And I think I've got him wide receiver 22 or 23 in my dynasty rankings. And I think there's no reason why he can't be a fringe wide receiver 1 this season. And I think it's great because if you're doing startups, you haven't got to draft him as your wide receiver 1. You can take him as obviously wide receiver 3. I mean, if you can get him as even wide receiver 2 would feel really good. Linking up with Deshaun Watson. We know what he can do for Will Fuller in fantasy. We know what he's done with DeAndre Hopkins. And he can sustain a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. So if he's going to play the full season, then yeah, a fringe wide receiver 1, I think, is definitely in the realms of possibility.
Yeah, definitely. I just think... Go on, Rich.
I was just going to say, I just want to point out, I've not got him ranked as a wide receiver 1 or overall wide receiver 1. He's my wide receiver 26. You just asked about ceiling. I think the one point that I'd also like to bring up, I know I keep banging on about contracts, but he's basically, because he got traded and the Browns, let's be honest, didn't have to pay up much to get him. The way his contract works is that he's got a big base salary, but he's got no guaranteed money. So his contract is essentially a 1-year rolling contract. So if he doesn't produce this year, that's it. The Browns can just let him go for nothing. So I think he's essentially going to be in a rolling contract year. And to me, that's a fantastic thing because every year he's going to have to produce in order to get that money the next year.
Yeah, another great point from the contract king in Rich. Love it. But yeah, we've touched upon there's a very limited competition for targets behind Amari Cooper. So Ali, we'll move on to your next question and another wide receiver over there at Cleveland.
Yeah, someone that one of us at the Wildcard is high on, and it's David Bell. So just wanted to get your guys' views on David Bell. How high on Bell were you in the pre-draft process? And do you think he can be a fantasy contributor now, teaming up with Deshaun Watson and having Amari Cooper opposite him in the lineup?
Go on, Liam.
I'll let you take this one, Rich, before I upset Matt again.
I was trying to pass it off. I like David Bell. I think that's probably the way I'd go. Is that I think the hate on him has gone too far. I think people overhype the athleticism traits, and I think that he had a shocking combine, but this is still a guy that produced fantastically at a young age in college, and has got a good production profile. Let's not sit here and pretend that he had an incredible production profile. I think if people are taking, for me, the likes of, no hate Liam, but John Mechie or Jalen Tobin or Alex Pierce ahead of him, I'd question it, because I think that there is a clear role for him. I think he basically steps in as the Jarvis Landry replacement almost immediately. And I think he has got a very natural playing style that's going to fit well in that offense, in that you've got Amari Cooper that is the elite route runner that can operate in those intermediate to deeper routes. And I think David Bell is just going to work underneath. And I think he's a better nuanced player than his athleticism portrays. And I think that sometimes these are the best. I don't particularly like taking wide receivers outside the kind of top 16, 17 picks in a rookie startup. But that's the profile that if I'm going to take a wide receiver, it will be, because the reason he's falling is because of that athleticism traits. But he's going to win despite the athleticism. You look at someone like a Keenan Allen, he fell in rookie drafts because he didn't have that athleticism. And I'm not saying that David Bell's going to be Keenan Allen, but Keenan Allen ran a terrible 40, ran a terrible 3-cone and isn't a good athlete, but he wins because he's able to separate during the route and late in the route and create that opportunity to get the ball. And I think that David Bell has that same upside.
Wonderfully said, Rich.
You ready to be upset now, Matt?
No, we'll move on to...
Pre-draft, I had Bell as my wide receiver 14 in the class. So the way that my very rudimentary model that I tried building about 3 weeks before the draft worked is I have my own rankings, my own film rankings, production metrics, etc. But I also included the NFL film grades by Lancer Align, because the way that I see it is, if the NFL don't like a player, if you don't think that they're going to succeed in the NFL, why are you drafting them in fantasy? You've got to take how good they are going into the NFL. There's Rich chuckling again. But if say the NFL don't like a player, why are you drafting them in the second round? Just purely based off production metrics or athletic profile. So I do like to bring that in, and that is where David Bell really dropped. He was not ranked very highly in the NFL or Lancer Alliance film grading system. I have no idea why. I loved his film. I was much higher on his film, but I'm also not a NFL scout or have been or anything along those lines. So that's where he really fell down in my model, and that's why he got pushed down so far. And then post-draft, sorry, Matt, close your ears. He dropped a rank, so he went to wide receiver 15 based on draft capital, amongst other things. But I liked his tape. I had him around my wide receiver 8 based on my own film rankings pre-draft, sorry. But I just, with the way that my model is set up, I can't figure out how to get him higher, and therefore I've only got one share, and I had to really reach based on my rankings to go and get it, and that was purely because I wanted a share just in case. But yeah, I see the role for Bell, but I really need to see it in action before I have to believe it now.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And Kev, I know you use a similar thing in your model using those film ranks. So where did Bell fit into your rankings? I'm interested to know if it's similar to Liam.
Lance Erline is a smart dude. Like, looking back over the years, he's unbelievable in terms of the film grades. I never used to have film grades in my model, but when I found his grades and I correlated them with how they performed, it was unbelievably successful. He's first of all, I think we need to think about players in tiers, and for me, he's in a tier between sort of wide receiver 9 and 15. I think anything in that range, you can tell yourself a story as to why. He's my wide receiver 13, and that's based on him going late third, and then everything else that factors in. I've not really thought about landing spot with Watson, with the Browns, how that's going to look. So I've got him wide receiver 13. I doubt I'm going to get much of him, but I did take him in a startup recently, so you never know. I think you just got to diversify, really. They're all very similar guys, 9 to 15. Get a bit of everyone, and you're going to have a better shot at hitting rather than wasting all your shares on Terrace Marshall.
Yeah, I feel like Kev's learning from previous mistakes. Ali, what's your feeling?
I've got him slightly higher, so you'll be pleased to know that he's my wide receiver 10. He's between George Pickens and Alec Pierce. I think that's about where I settle with him. And I've actually been taking him I think I've got 3 shares of him in rookie drafts just at the back of the second round. I thought I'm happy to take a punt on him there. There's a lot of running backs in round 3, 4, 5 that I want to take, but I'm still happy to take a wide receiver tied to an elite quarterback in Deshaun Watson at the back of the second round. So I'm still fairly high on him, like the landing spot, didn't like the draft capital, but I can certainly see a path to production from year one.
Yeah, no, I think
at least it wasn't fourth round draft capital, because that would have made him undraftable for Rick.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. So with that, we'll move on now to the tight end position. You've battered me enough for my rankings and where I've got everyone. So we're gonna move on to the tight end position. And Kev, over to you.
I think it's just amazing how it's fallen with me on David Njoku. God, he is a good-looking guy. But 25 years old. He was a tight end 9 back in 2018. I just want to know if you think he can beat that finish this season, and does that make his rank of tight end 19 at Keep Trade cut too low currently?
Go on, Liam.
You love setting me up on tight ends, don't you?
Oh no.
So surprisingly, Kev, I actually like where he's going at tight end 19. Where I have an issue with tight end position is, I'm sure we'll come on to it with the next team, but that kind of like I find it like the running back dead zone. I feel that there's a tight end dead zone as well. That's after the top 5 elite guys have gone, and then it goes to maybe tight end 12, 13, 14. And you kind of start, when you start moving away from the elite guys and trying to just go for that upside, I feel like a lot of tight ends have that upside, so I don't try and take anyone in that range. That's why I like Njoku, because he's outside of that dead zone. He's pushing back into mid to late tight end 2 range, and definitely this season, I think that he's going to get that opportunity, especially as we've said, with no real target competition outside of Cooper and maybe David Bell if you're Matt. Then I don't see that target share being an issue. So I think Njoku is a great pickup at tight end 19. As I said, at that range, I'm just looking for a nice punt play that is looking for that upside. And I think what comes into the ADP there, or the rankings, is again Deshaun Watson, that whole situation.
Yeah, I think for me, without wanting to echo what Liam just said, really, I've got my tight end tiers are, I've got Kyle Pitts, I've then got the other 3 elite guys, I've then got kind of 11 guys that are like I'm happy with if they fall to me at good value. And then there's basically the what the hell, who cares, everyone else at tight ends. And, if you go from 16 down to like 30, there'll probably be 2 tight ends in that range that break out and are absolute studs. And the rest will be absolutely useless. And it's, anyone who can sit here and say they can pick the 2 out of those 20, I think, perhaps they need to go play the lottery, because I think it's more guesswork than anything actually accurate. But yeah, I'm sitting here. I've got Njoku as my tight end 18. I probably am not going to end up with many shares, because I think where he's going, I'd rather have, Jelani Woods. I'd rather have Brevin Jordan. I'd rather have someone like even like a Logan Thomas than perhaps spending up for Njoku.
You're doing so well then, Rich. You did so well until that last name that you threw in there, and that just.
I thought I had to bring him up at some point on the show.
No, you should never mention ever again.
Love it.
No, I think you make some great points, and like we spoke about a little bit earlier, when it comes to these tight ends, when at this kind of range, you're just looking for that opportunity, aren't you? Really, and like we've touched upon, really, with Njoku is falling into that opportunity where it could be second in terms of targets. So yeah, the opportunity is great for Njoku and could potentially be one of those guys that can hit. But like Rich said, it gets tough when you're down at this range, and yeah, maybe Njoku could be that guy. But with that, we're going to now move on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, another team that's gone through a lot of change again at the quarterback position. Obviously selecting Kenny Pickett with pick 20 in the NFL draft, the only quarterback selected in the first round. Didn't even get any in the second round, did we? Had to wait until the third round before any other quarterbacks went off the board. So the class in a whole, it was a pretty big disappointment. So I'm kind of going to switch the question up a little bit. There's no point as ranking them against each other because, as I say, Kenny Pickett, the only one that really got any kind of solid draft capital. So I'm interested to know, where would you rank Pickett amongst the 2021 QB class?
QB6.
Yeah, I've got him exactly the same.
Yeah, he'd be in a tier with Mac Jones for me. I'll be honest, I hated Pickett pre-draft. I really didn't like it. I still don't particularly like him. I'm sitting here saying that I'd take him at 104 in a rookie Superflex draft because I think the positional value is there. But yeah, I would easily take the other five guys. I take it now. We've seen a year in the NFL, but I'd have, with my rookie models and gradings, I'd have taken him QB6 last year. So he probably wouldn't have even been a first rounder for me last year because I think I had Mac Jones at 11.
Yeah, I'm very similar. The only thing that I've got on Pickett is he could be very stable going into once he's beaten out Trubisky, which hopefully it's not too hard for him. That position's going to be very stable. They're not going to take another quarterback for another 3-4 years. So that goes for him, but that's about it. I mean, me and Rich both weren't high on him going into the draft, and the reason he's jumped up in both of our rankings is the draft capital and the lack thereof at every other quarterback in this class. Like, if, for example, I was high on Matt Howell, but if Matt Corral went in the first round, I'm sure that me and Rich would be talking about Matt Corral maybe over Pickett, or at least in the same tier because of that draft capital. But because no one else in the 22 class got that capital, there's nothing there to like. What's the word I'm looking for? They're to like kind of fight him away from that QB1 in the 22 class. Going back to 21, let's face it, all five of those guys went before Kenny Pickett did in terms of the first round. So yeah, now we've seen 1 year in the NFL, we may falter a little bit, and we've got a bit more of an insight on what those five guys do. But I also like the upside of all those five guys over Kenny Pickett, unfortunately. I do think Mac Jones is quite similar. I think that both Mac Jones and Kenny Pickett are going to be very safe picks at QB2 rather than going for upside. But that's purely projection on Kenny Pickett at the moment.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned it a couple of times. Kenny Pickett, I think he's now the consensus QB1 in this class, but it's more by default, isn't it, really, rather than what he actually is as a prospect. I just think because everybody else fell so much in the NFL draft. But Ali, I know you were probably the highest, definitely out of me and Kev anyway. I don't know where we're alongside Liam and Richard's rankings, but you were the highest out of us on Kenny Pickett. Where would you put him in regards to that 2021 class?
I'd like to say I was the smartest, not the highest. I was the smartest. He was my quarterback 3, but again, I didn't really like the prospect. I had Malik Willis ahead of him because of the hype he was getting. He's obviously Konami code quarterback. There was talk he could go as high as number 2 overall, and then I had Matt Corral over him, who I just liked more as a prospect than Kenny Pickett. So yeah, he'd be exactly the same position as me. He'd be quarterback 6 in the class, and he's in that same tier in Dynasty for me as Mac Jones. And I got a lot of criticism yesterday for that tweet I put out saying Mac Jones was overrated.
You got nothing but support from me, Ali.
Exactly, you were the only one backing me up, Rich. So thanks for that. But I just don't see the upside on for Mac Jones. He's incredibly safe, but I think possibly not going to win you leagues as that quarterback 2. I'd rather take a punt on someone like a Zach Wilson, who gives you at least a bit of rushing upside. But Kenny Pickett, the Steelers are a good organization in They're quarterbacks. They look after him. They know what they're doing. He's got some fantastic weapons, but again, until I see him, he possibly ball out. I don't think he's going to, but he's got them weapons. I'm not going to move him up. He's still in just that quarterback too. He's just a safe quarterback, really. So I'm not too excited about him. I'd rather have any of the the 4 quarterbacks from last year's class.
Yeah, I think the only positive spin I could maybe put on Pickett is that something you don't really see very often with the incoming rookie quarterbacks is the situation that he landed in. I mean, going to the Steelers and the weapons they've got, it's not very often you see that an incoming rookie quarterback landing in a situation as good as that. But beyond that, yeah, I think I'm with the rest of the guys. It's tough to get too excited about Kenny Pickett, and I'd probably put him in that same range as Mac Jones. But with that, we'll swiftly move on to the RB position. And Ali, back to you for your question.
Yeah, so we are going to talk about an elite fantasy producer for once. It's Najee Harris, and coming into his year 2, who's obviously a bit of an older prospect, but he did have a fantastic year 1. He was the running back 3. So just a simple question, really. Who would you rather in Dynasty? Would you rather Najee Harris, or would you rather the running back 1 from this class, Breece Hall, in Dynasty?
I'll let Rich take this one because he loves a bit of Breece Hall.
Any opportunity to talk about Breece? So as we speak, having seen Najee Harris in the NFL for a year, I would take Najee Harris over Breece Hall. As prospects, I have got Breece Hall ahead of Najee Harris. So Breece Hall was a 94th percentile prospect for me. Najee Harris is an 89th percentile prospect. So both truly elite, but Breece Hall ahead. But I just think that you've seen a year, you've got that guaranteed uses. I also think the one concern I have about Breece Hall is the presence of Michael Carter and the potential lack of Matt's favourite targets in the backfield. I think it was an underrated thing. Najee Harris saw 90 targets as a rookie.
Yeah.
And I get that, it's a different quarterback, but I don't think the offensive scheme is going to be massively wild. I wouldn't be shocked if Najee Harris was in that sort of 70 to 80 target range. I think he had like 20 targets in one game last year, didn't he? So maybe we'll bring that down slightly towards the 70 number. But I think he's a true 3-down back. There was not many players last year that saw the level of opportunity share that he did. I think 83% opportunity share is absolutely wild. We talked about Nick Chubb earlier. He was at 59%. I mean, it's the amount of usage is obscene. So I just think that's the only reason I'd have Najee Harris over Breece Hall at the moment.
I mean, going into next year, I could see a situation where Breece Hall is being taken over Najee Harris. That there is that ceiling there, but for me, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to be very close. There might be a tier of, say, Najee Harris, maybe DeAndre Swift, and Breece Hall in that tier, and you can pick one or one of the other two. It doesn't really matter. You're quite happy with one of those 3, but currently, right now, I've got Najee, and I'm not going to keep harping on about this because Rich had his fun with Breece.
No, I think great points made, especially about the receiving and just talking about a rookie quarterback coming in. These rookie quarterbacks, they need that safety blanket. I feel like Najee Harris can be that safety blanket. Kev, I'm just going to quickly throw it over to you because I know that Travis Etienne was your guy from that draft class. So I'm interested to know what's your view on Najee and the situation that he's currently in, and would you take him over Breece Hall?
Yeah, I think Rich nailed it, really. The fact that he's done it once in the NFL, he's got that stable situation where we know exactly what he's going to be used as. There's also the bonus that maybe the next guy we're going to speak about might not be in town. So I think it really safe guy. And early in drafts, I prefer to be a little bit safer if I can be. So that would be Najee Harris over the talent of Breece initially. But it would be absolutely no shock at all if Breece Hall's in that tier with Jonathan Taylor next year.
No, love it. And with that, Kev, we might as well stick with you and on to your next question.
Yeah, I teed myself up then. Deontay Johnson, obviously, it's a guy that both you like. He's entering his contract season, and we know the Steelers, they've got a history of letting guys walk from their team. So if he does, there's going to be uncertainty, and there's the overall record of poor free agent wide receivers translating to another team. Deontay Johnson's currently wide receiver 17 at Keep Trade Cut, which I do think is too low, but please persuade me on getting him ranked as a top 12 wide receiver.
Rich, he's your guy. I'll let you have this one as well.
So I might go a little bit further than just top 12. So he's my current wide receiver 8. Look, I agree with what you're saying about the Steelers don't traditionally pay wide receivers, but I'd argue there's one slight difference. The Steelers don't traditionally pay with their wide receiver 2s. They have always paid one wide receiver. It was Antonio Brown. They chose to pay Antonio Brown over Mike Wallace. Whilst they were paying Antonio Brown, they obviously let Emmanuel Sanders and a boatload of other free agent wide receivers walk. And for me, I don't see a world where they're not paying Deontay Johnson. I think that he is a truly elite player. And I think that the knock on him, if he was a 6'4" wide receiver producing the numbers that he does, I think everybody would be hyping him up as a potential top 3 dynasty wide receiver. I think the fact that he's a smaller player, people don't obsess over him. But the truth is that the guy just gets open. It's outrageous that we're talking about him being, what would you say, Kev? Wide receiver 17?
That's
on
keep
trade cut.
Yeah.
So this is a guy that was the wide receiver 7 in points per game last year. He was wide receiver 8 overall. He's seen an upgrade in quarterback. No massive change in terms of new kind of potential target takers away, if that's a word. Target competition, that's the word. And yet he's being ranked 10 spots below where he was last year, and he's still on that rookie contract. He's still young. I don't know what age. I think he's 20, 25, 26. Like, he's not getting up towards that 28, 29-year-old cliff. So, yeah, I appreciate, he's been my guy for the last 2 years, and I seem to always be higher than consensus, but I just don't get the hate on him. The only thing I can think is that people look at him and think he's small, so he can't be a stud wide receiver.
I got him as wide receiver 13 at the moment. He's just on that cusp of wide receiver 1. I just don't know, because you spoke about T. Higgins in the last segment. I like T. Higgins and him about the same, and to me they're very close together. So I could easily take Deontay Johnson in one draft as wide receiver 12, and then T. Higgins in the next. Coming into a contract year, you always want to love that contract year production. And as Rich said, the Steelers always pay one wide receiver. The issue is Deontay Johnson going to be that guy, and that's where the keep trade cut value of wide receiver 17 is coming from. But I think wide receiver 17 is ludicrous. I thought I was low at 13, but that's probably because I just spend a lot of time talking to Rich and need to get out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think Rich must rub off on a lot of us because I've got him wide receiver 9 as well. So definitely high him. And I know Ali as well. You're high on Deontay Johnson. Kev, I think you don't mind him. So
up and down.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that we do love Deontay Johnson. But like Rich touched upon, there's a couple of other wide receivers that could be target takers away, as Rich said. And, Chase Claypool, a guy that was selected in round 2 in 2020, he's shown flashes of brilliance, but equally flashes of stupidity during his 2 years in the NFL. And now they've selected another wide receiver in round 2 in George Pickens, who maybe you could label as being similar in what he's done in his college, shown those flashes, but been labelled a bit of a hothead of what I've seen on Twitter and everything. So I'm just interested to know, straight up question, who would you rather have in Dynasty, Pickens or Claypool?
Are we talking at cost or
however you want to take it? It's completely up to you if you could take it however you want them.
At cost, Pickens.
Okay. So straight up you disagree? Straight up you take?
The issue with Claypool is I've got him in a few spots and I can't sell him for anything. Late firsts, early seconds in this class of all classes. People have said that this class isn't filled with depth, and yet you can't sell Claypool for an early second. At the moment, you just can't get value for him, so you're stuck with him if he's on your roster. No one seems to want him, and I think that's where the stupidity comes in. So probably Pickens, but I personally wouldn't want either of them on my team if I was worrying about future production, basically.
Okay, Rich, are you similar lines or?
No, not at all, really.
Love it.
So I'm Claypool. He's like 3 tiers above Pickens for me. So I got Claypool at 37. I got Pickens at 49. To give a kind of rough value, so I'd happily pay the 110 in this year's draft for Claypool. I think that traditionally, I feel like I've always been lower than consensus on Claypool because I think, to go back to the point about Deontay Johnson, the fact Claypool is big and fast, people overhype him and don't actually look at the rest of the production. But I think this is a guy that last year, the issues with Claypool were that his target kind of catchable targets was atrocious. He was catching from a guy that couldn't throw the ball further than 5 yards without it wobbling. I think Kenny Pickett's not got the strongest arm in the world, but I'm fairly confident that Kenny Pickens is going to be able to at least push the ball slightly downfield. And I think that you'll see Claypool's kind of ADOT rise and he'll get some of those more valuable targets downfield. His ADOT last year was 11.8. Like a guy of his profile, yes, he'll be catching a lot of screen passes and things like that. But if he's not getting a 13, 14 yard kind of ADOT, he's just not getting used enough. This is a big, fast guy that should be used down the field. Pickens is a guy that, look, I'm a Georgia guy. I loved him that freshman year, but I feel like I've been burnt the last 2 years with him, and I just can't. I could see a world in which George Pickens in 2 years' time is being considered a top 5 wide receiver in terms of dynasty ranks. Like, the guy is so talented, and the guy has got that completely obscene elite upside. He has got the potential to do everything at the next level, but the guy's a bit of a moron, and I don't trust that he will be able to produce. So he's the guy I've had hardest times ranks. I seem to be getting a decent amount of him at that sort of early second round pick. He's my 13th overall prospect in terms of a Superflex rank draft, and I seem to be getting a decent amount of him there. But yeah, I can't, in a startup, I can't pay up on the guy like George Pickens, who I think isn't going to get utilised very much in his rookie year. And for me, rookie wide receivers that don't produce in year one, the track record of them is pretty terrible, to be honest.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some risk involved, but like I said, the potential upside with him is huge. I'm with you on that. I'm a big fan of Pickens. Really liked him as a prospect. Quite like the landing spot as well. Kev, I know you were similar. You really like Pickens. What's your feelings on Pickens, where he's landed? And I'm assuming you'd take him over Claypool maybe at cost.
I do like Pickens. So that's a way of me saying no. It's just my strategy in startups. I will always lean the veteran guy. I'm playing on 2-year windows. I think Claypool's going to be better over the next 2 years. One of the funniest things was seeing Claypool announce Pickens at the draft.
Yeah.
Like he was coming out all cocky onto the stage, like his persona, and then it's like he reads it and he's shocked. Oh, Josh Pickens. So that was quite hilarious. I'd be worried for Claypool, but like Rich mentioned, I don't think he's been used great. He's not been a great match for Big Ben. Pickett's slightly better, but yeah, I'm leaning Claypool. I think he's got talent. In his season when he did break out, it was used various ways, rushing, deep balls as well. So there's a lot of ways he can win, and he had some other nice metrics, like when he was on the field, he was a target hog as a rookie as well. So. And he's due touchdown regression. He got 1 touchdown last season, so that swings back. Claypool's going to be looking good.
No, love it. We've covered the wide receiver. So Ali, we'll go to you and your question on the tight end position.
Yeah, so Pat Freiermuth coming into year 2. Just want to get your guys' thoughts on where does he fall in your current dynasty rankings, and what do you see the ceiling being for Pat Freiermuth, and can he ever get into that top sort of 5-6 tight ends into the sort of elite tier? Do you think he'll ever reach that height?
Go on, Emily, take tight first.
It's almost like you listened to our Dynasty pod from Tuesday and handpicked this question. So we did go over it on the pod, and both of us are in a very similar mindset of we think he's overvalued at this point. I think a lot of people are going into that rookie season and seeing that and think, oh, he's not going to get any worse. that they think that Big Ben's gone, Kenny Pickett's in there, and now everything's just going to go up from there. And they've just added George Pickens, as we've just mentioned. I'm not saying that all of the targets are going to disappear, because I do think Pat Freiermuth is talented. But for me, as I said, for the Browns, for Njoku, he's kind of... Freiermuth is in that tight end dead zone, and I'm not taking anyone in this range, because I think anyone here kind of has the same upside. And to come back to the question, I don't think that he's going to become a top elite tight end at the position. So for me, no, I've got him around the tight end 12-ish range. But as I said, this range, I'm not taking a tight end in my startups.
I think for me, I differ slightly on Pat Freiermuth, whether it's tight end premium or not. And I think this is perhaps a distinction that isn't talked about enough, in that Pat Freiermuth in a standard PPR league is my tight end 7, but in a tight end premium league, he's my tight end 10, because I think that he profiles is always going to be that red zone usage. He's not going to be a high target guy. And I think that people think tight end premium affects all tight ends exactly the same. But actually, if you're more of a red zone tight end than a high target guy, you don't get that same boost, because you don't get the boost on points on touchdowns as opposed to targets. I think that the usage he had last year, he clearly outproduced what you would expect. This is a guy that had 18 red zone targets, yet caught 7 touchdowns. But I think there is also a world in which there is a significant step forward for him as a prospect. He only participated on 54% of routes last year. You take that to someone like Chase Claypool was at 80%. Now, that's a rookie year for a tight end. We traditionally see rookie tight ends on the quickest to produce. If Pat Freiermuth can get up towards that kind of 75%, 80% route participation, you're probably adding another 3 or 4 points per game onto what he's doing. And, this is a guy that I think he was tight end 14, 15 last year. That immediately puts him in the kind of tight end 6, tight end 7 range. And I think that's very realistic. I'm not dreaming any scenarios in which he's going to see massive upticks. But I think in a startup, I'm like Liam, I'm probably never going to take him, because I don't really like paying up for where he's going, because I think people see the top 4 guys go and then sort of panic and like, right, I need to go and grab a tight end, and I think he gets pushed up. But in terms of trade value, I'd happily go and trade if I could buy him for like the 112 in a tight end premium league in current class, I'd easily pay that for him right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Kev, Ali, both of you guys, what's your feelings on Freiermuth? Obviously, I know he had a great rookie season, one that I don't think anyone really foreseen having such a solid rookie season, given the amount of competition for targets that was there as well with the wide receivers that they have. So what's your feelings on Freiermuth? Where would you be happy taking him in your startups?
Well, you go, Ali, is your boy, Postman Pat.
So, Liam, I think you absolutely nailed it, because he is the very start of that tight end dead zone where I'm not happy to take a tight end. I think Dallas Goedert is the last tight end I'm willing to take, and after that, early on in the draft. After that, I'm just going to leave it and take a double dip on 2 or 3 tight ends and just hope that one of them has a decent season. So Freiermuth, I think, is overdrafted. I think he's I think he's fine, and I think he surprised me last year, but I don't think he's ever going to make that leap into the top 5 or 6. So for me, he's always going to be ranked at his ceiling where he is right now. So I won't have a lot of Pat Freiermuth in Dynasty.
I think the one thing there, Ali, and I'm sure you're on the same lines as this, is I'm not willing to take a tight end in that range, in that tight end dead zone. It's not willing at the cost that they're currently going. Yeah. I would much rather take one a few rounds later and get a similar upside.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's just that old aged strategy, man. Where if it's not the elite guys, it's kind of you're in trouble. Really, I think you can just wait a little bit and take one of the later guys. Hopefully, you can pivot up from a tight end breakout. But yeah, early tight end for me. Pat Freiermuth is someone that if I've got him in an existing league, I'm happy to have him, and just he's a potential pivot point a little bit later on in the season if he's hitting. But startups early or none for me.
Yeah, and Rich, I'll just circle back to you because you mentioned about his usage in the red zone. Is there any concerns with, like we touched upon, Claypool? We know he's a bigger guy. Pickens as well, somebody that's been used in the red zone over at Georgia in college. Is there any concerns that maybe that usage in the red zone's lessened moving into next season? And with that, does that then become a concern for you?
Actually, I don't think his usage will change much because I don't think he was hugely targeted. I mean, 18 targets for a tight end isn't massive. I think his efficiency in terms of turning those 18 targets into 7 touchdowns, I'd expect that to change. Yeah. But I do think that the natural regression in that tight end and in the touchdown number based on the red zone usage will adjust because I do think he'll step into a full-time role rather than, as I said, being that kind of 55% route participation guy.
No, love it. And I think that's it. I think we've wrapped it up quite nicely, gone over the Steelers and then the Browns, covering all the positions. So I just want to thank you both for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. Always good fun chatting to you both. Do you both just want to give yourselves a shout out? Anything you're up to? Anything that you've got in the pipeline?
Go on,
for it, Rich.
We're both so polite.
Both so humble.
So you can find me. I'm at Dynasty Island on Twitter. You see all my work, all my Patreon, my DLF articles, all my 5-yard rush stuff. But yeah, I just want to echo what everybody said so far in terms of if you're listening and you've not donated, please go ahead and do it because the guys are working very hard today to hopefully raise some fantastic money for an incredible cause. So please go and donate if you haven't already.
Yeah, echoing what Richard said. So I'm at the FSA tweets on Twitter. I don't put out a lot of content. I'm the guy that sits behind the scenes and edits everyone's articles. So you'll see everyone else's articles, but not my own. But yeah, just echoing what Rich said. If you want, if you can help these guys, because they've put so much effort into this stream. We've been having messages after messages every few weeks just to make sure we're still okay. And we appreciate everything you've done there, guys. The only one I did want to mention was the UK FFC. So if you are in the UK, I know that Kev and Matt, I believe, are going. I don't know whether Ali's going. I haven't seen the tickets lists, but we're most likely all going to be there. It's the first fantasy football kind of get together for the UK. And we're also supporting the same charity. We're going to be supporting Mind as well. So any proceeds or any profits from that will be going towards Mind as well. So if you can donate to these guys for this stream, that's brilliant as well. And check out @_UKFFC.
Absolutely. I know myself and Kev are going on the train down together. It's going to be a lot of fun going there. Sadly Ali won't be joining us, but I'm sure, we'll have a great time. And yeah, like you said, raising money for a great cause. Just doing everything we can, aren't we, to help Mind and obviously the mental health and everything. So we appreciate you both coming on. Looking forward to seeing you both down in London in July. It's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, thanks once again for joining us. And I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.
See you later, guys. So, boys,
you're nicer than me, Matt. You let him actually say goodbye.
I'll let him. Yeah, you have to let him say bye. I know you just cut him. I thought Rich then for a second. He kind of jumped out. I thought he'd said his bit and he was done. He was gone, but and I can see him laughing in the lobby. He can't comment back now, so we could listen. But that was a lot of fun, and I know you've got some more great guests coming on, and I'll be bouncing out now. So yeah, enjoy the next hour.
Enjoy your break.
Yeah, Kev, do you want the honours of booting me out, Kev? I know you love booting people out.
No,
so.
it's fine. I'm a good guy. I'll let you do it yourself. I actually booted him then. I thought it was quite funny.
I can see that happening.
Teed it up for me nicely. I'll let you kick us off, Ali.
Yeah, so this is hour number 3 coming up. We're going to move division to the NFC North now. We're going to talk about the Packers and the Lions. So we've got from King Fantasy Sports, we've got Lewis, who's rocking his LA Rams jersey. How you doing, Lewis?
I'm good, thank you, mate. I'm rocking the Lions of the West jersey. I always have to put something on before I come on a podcast. It doesn't feel right to not, and especially just to in case you don't know who won the Super Bowl this year, it's always just nice to mention at the start of any podcast. So.
Mate, I was there this time last year. I was mentioning Tampa Bay as much as I could. So just make the most of it, because you never know when it might change again.
Well, you have to, because you've seen the schedule. You've seen that we're playing the Bills week 1. So I've only got until week 1 to then brag to people until we get blown out by Josh Allen. So
I'm not so sure about that. I think you're going to do rather well this year again. Unfortunately, being in the same in the NFC with us.
That's a spicy week 1.
I didn't realise that. I didn't know you were playing the Bills for week 1. That's a hell of a matchup.
yeah, Thursday night opener.
Wow.
Wow.
That is going to be a cracking game. Obviously, we can't wait for the season to get going. But yeah, we're going to talk about the Packers, and we're talking about the Lions as well. So, Kev, you're up first with the question. We're going to start at the quarterback position. What's your question for Lewis?
Yeah, first of all, welcome on, Lewis. It's great of you to with us today and rocking the jersey as well. It's always nice to see people's colours and allegiances on the show. So yeah, kicking off at QB, Aaron Rodgers obviously is a guy that's done it for so long as a talent at an elite level. He's actually slid to QB 16 at market value, thinking of keep trade cut, which it's a bit of a shock. Essentially, he's an automatic QB1 if he plays a full season. So I just want to know if there's any concerns that he now does finish outside of that top 12 QB1 season without Davante Adams. Does that make his value at QB 16 fair? Or is he someone that's a target of value at that cost?
So I think Aaron Rodgers has to be a target at that value. I think a lot of that price is baked in the retirement threats, and we weren't sure exactly what was going on. There was moments at which I got Aaron Rodgers in a startup last offseason in like the back of the 6th round in a Superflex league, because people are just so scared about that player that they don't know if they're coming back. They don't know what's going to happen with them. So I think that's still kind of baked into the cost. But I was having a little look through Aaron Rodgers' finishes over the last, so it's just the data you can get on the sleeper, so the last 13 seasons. And I wanted to ask you guys to take a guess. In seasons, so the last 13 years, how many finishes do you think Aaron Rodgers has had outside the top 10 in games where he's played 15 or more, in seasons where he's played 15 or more games?
Top 10. How many has he not had being a top 10?
How many seasons has he not finished in the top 10 when he's played 15 or more games?
I'd say like a low number, maybe like 3.
3?
I was going to say 3 as well.
You're right that it is a low number. It's 0. When in the last 13 seasons, there's obviously 2 seasons where he's been injured and missed a few games, but when he's played at least 15, so obviously normally with the being rested for the last game of the season, which Aaron Rodgers normally is because the Packers are normally doing pretty well, he has never finished outside the top 10. And yes, he's going to lose some production with Davante Adams. Yes, he's going to lose the fact that it's going to be his first read in every single play. Is he going to lose enough that we're going to see any tangible difference for fantasy? Absolutely not. He's actually, we had the same thing with Tom Brady and a similar thing with Aaron Rodgers where we've expected him to fall off. He finishes the QB 6 this year, the QB 2 last year. So yes, there's going to be a slight drop off from not having Davante, but what we'll see is Aaron Rodgers just spreading the ball around a lot more. We might find that we don't have a reliable weapon from him, which we're going to come on to in a bit, but I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to be at risk of dropping off, especially not down to QB 16.
Yeah, just as far as I'm concerned, I've not got any concerns about Aaron Rodgers. He did slide a little bit. He was my quarterback 8 before the Davante trade. He's now my quarterback 11. I think he's going to finish as a quarterback 1 again this year, no matter who he's slinging the ball to. He's still got some targets that are still there. We're talking about Aaron Rodgers. He's an amazing. It's the best quarterback I've seen live. Well, I haven't seen him live, but I've watched him, and he's just an absolute natural. He's fantastic. I looked on Keep Trade Cut yesterday, and I couldn't believe that he's going after. He's ranked after Mac Jones in the dynasty rankings. I thought that's just a bit silly in my eyes.
It's the nature of dynasty rankings, isn't it? And it's a way that I've actually always really enjoyed playing dynasty. Is people are so afraid of age, and you don't want to be left holding the bag when a player completely falls off the cliff. You don't want to be someone who took Todd Gurley number 1 overall in 2017 and then ended up with a player on your roster you can completely cut. But the difference being that if you still have a player that's going to be productive, and if you I don't believe there's anywhere that you can actually get you can actually get Aaron Rodgers for Mac Jones straight up. I don't think you can actually make that happen. But if you can target him somewhere by offering a younger QB, if you say you took Justin Fields at the 103 in your rookie draft and you think, actually, I can compete next year, 100% go and get him. And if you can get something else on top, then you're laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah, absolutely. I put something out about Mac Jones being overrated as well, and it seems to have stirred the nest with a lot of Mac Jones fans, and even some people coming back with he's got more upside than Trey Lance and Justin Fields, which I don't quite understand. Kev, you're a smart guy. Has he got more upside than Lance and Fields? And what are your feelings on Aaron Rodgers as well?
I mean, first of all, the Mac Jones chatter, absolute clowns that are suggesting that. So I don't want to spend too much time on Mac Jones, but just looking at Keep Trade Cut, he's actually QB 18 now. Guys that are going ahead of him, literally unreal. All the rookies from last season, so that's like your Trevor Lawrence, your Lance, your Fields, your Wilson, your Jones. You've got Jalen Hurts. You've got Derek Carr as well. I think it's crazy. He's my QB 11. Him, Stafford, Wilson, I think are all very similar values in my eyes, but QB 18, which he is now, that's beyond a joke for me. I think people are just scared and assuming that all that production is down to Devontae Adams, but even in the games Adams has not played, he's not face planted, he's been as good. He just spreads it around. He's talent-wise, he's in my lifetime, or as I've been watching the last 20 years, he's the top 2 in QBs in terms of talent for me. I think Brady's obviously done amazing, but pure talent-wise, I think Rodgers and Mahomes are the top 2, just based on their skill set, and they'll make anybody look good. So there's no concerns for me. You're getting him at a great value, and just fill your boots at QB 18. That's ridiculous and funny.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to Aaron Rodgers coming to England this year to play against Matt's Giants. I think that could be a bit of a spicy matchup. So one to look forward to for sure. We'll move on to the running back position now. So that's my question. And I put out my dynasty rankings a couple of weeks ago, and certainly the biggest criticism that I faced was I didn't have Aaron Jones as my top 24 running back. He was my running back 25. So what is your feeling on Aaron Jones, Lewis, in dynasty? Where do you have him ranked roughly? And is he a sell for you now, or are you still quite high on Aaron Jones?
Aaron Jones is my running back 22. So, I obviously wouldn't get the wealth of criticism for having him three or four spots higher. But, running backs in dynasty is always an interesting thing. Because as I was saying, if you have Ezekiel Elliott right now, have fun trying to sell him. Even if you have Derrick Henry right now, have fun trying to sell him. You kind of have to accept these players' values have fallen off a cliff. And it happens every single year with Aaron Jones. In redraft leagues as well, that he goes at about the RB 10 or 11, towards the RB dead zone. And then we get into the season and we go, hang on, Aaron Jones is really good, isn't he? Aaron Jones is really talented. And that's not dropped off. We've seen no signs of it. In fact, the fact that we've seen him function a lot as a pass catcher and not taking too much work through the tackles by having Jamal Williams in the backfield and now AJ Dillon to spell him, it means that he can go for longer. And I'm not necessarily in on Aaron Jones as yes, he's a screaming value and you should be buying him because it's incredibly context dependent. If you're not going to compete this year, you shouldn't be owning Aaron Jones because you might be left with the bag at the end of it. But I think he's going to have a really good season. I think the offense is now built to run the ball a little bit more just because those are probably their 2 best offensive weapons. I'm not unconvinced that Aaron Jones isn't now the best pass catching threat on the Packers. So you've seen Matt LaFleur come out in the offseason and talk about a lot of 2-back sets. So having him catch passes out the backfield with AJ Dillon on there to keep the defense a little bit honest. I'm quite in on him in redraft for this year, and I think he'll have a really strong season. I'd be really surprised if he finished outside the top 10 if he's healthy. In Dynasty, I think he's going to be a pretty good buy if you think you can get him. If you think you're going to compete this year, you could probably get him for about the 110 because owners are pretty desperate to get rid. And if you think of the running backs that you might be getting at the 110 instead, you're taking Aaron Jones every day of the week, aren't you?
100%. And Kev, what are your feelings on Aaron Jones? I know you play in a 2-year window in Dynasty, so Are you pretty high on Aaron Jones going forward?
Well, you're quite a smart dude, Alex. I've got him exactly the same spot. Very close to us next guy I want to talk about as well. But I think this year in Dynasty, we'll go back to last year. It was like a top 20 running backs, and then people was getting scared. I think it's actually grown a little bit. I think first 25, 26, you can be really happy short term. Then there's guys getting pushed down, like you mentioned, Lewis, Ezekiel Elliott. Basically anybody who's 25, 26 falls lower than they should. So he's my running back 25. He's in a big tier of the older guys in there. I'm really happy going after him at that. He's going to be a running back 2, running back 3. I think it's a great value. And again, Lewis, you mentioned something really nice about the pass catching upside there. He is a great pass catcher. So you're probably going to see him as a 1-2 punch, maybe a lose some early down work. But actually, you're not that fussed about him losing that early down work between the 20s. He's there for the pass catching role, and that's going to grow. So I'd be very happy with him this season. I then think next season there is a potential out in his contract. But I do think he's talented enough that if he goes to another team, he's going to at least flirt with running back 2 numbers. So 2 years, I think 2 years more of really good production you can get from him.
Yeah, I agree. And I found this year ranking running backs has been the hardest job to do. You've got the top 4 guys that are all sort of stud young running backs. Then after that, when it gets to McCaffrey, Eckler, Joe Mixon, Nick Chubb, Derrick Henry, and the likes of that, there's so many question marks on age, contract, stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of guys, as you both mentioned, that is going to get pushed down that can be great values who you can buy with late first maybe, and they're going to give you the opportunity to win championships just by having them on your roster this year, because I can't see Derrick Henry being outside the top 10 running backs. I can't see Aaron Jones being there either. So certainly for this year and possibly next year as well, you're going to get pretty much elite fantasy production. So
if you look through Keep Trade Cut, I'm having a little look at the moment at the running back rankings, and obviously we have to bear in mind dynasty rankings function a little bit differently. But if you're in a window to contend, let's say you can have either their RB10, RB12, and RB14, which is J.K. Dobbins, Kenneth Walker, and Travis Etienne, or you can take the RB16, RB21, and RB25, which is Derrick Henry, Aaron Jones, and Ezekiel Elliott, and Leonard Fournette in there as well. 100% you're going to compete with that second group, and you might even be able to get more on top for the younger running backs. People are just scared of old running backs, and I get it. I completely get it. You can look at the team on my jersey. I've seen it happen. But you don't want to be left with a dead player on your roster at the end of the season, someone you absolutely can't get rid of. But if you think you're on a competing roster, you can go and get Zeke so cheap. And is he going to be anything less than an RB2? You can go and get Aaron Jones so cheap. Is he going to be anything less than an RB2? Of course he's not. Go win a title.
You've got to think, you finished the 111, you've been the runner-up, and you need a running back. Aaron Jones or James Cook or Rashad White or Damian Pierce or whoever at that spot. Aaron Jones.
Can you even comfortably get James Cook at the 111? I'm seeing him go around the 105 in some places.
Yeah. Don't look at me. I took him. I've put it out there on Twitter. I took him at one spot at the 110 because that's the only place I'm going to get him. I need one share just in case. Just in case is 60% of what his brother has achieved in the NFL. So we'll swiftly move on from James Cook and we'll go to Kev's question. And what is your question about another running back?
Yeah, so we're keeping the backfield for the Packers. AJ Dillon, he is slightly above Aaron Jones in my rankings, one spot above, so they're next to each other. He has flashed 3 down upside, especially last season. He did show out really well as a receiver. And like I touched upon, it does look like Jones's final season in Green Bay. So I just want to know, Lewis, do you think that Dillon's got that 3 down back potential to smash? And is he a value at running back 21 at value?
So I'm the same as you, that I have him one spot I have him next to Aaron Jones. I actually have him just behind at RB23, but it's kind of interchangeable, to be honest, at that level. AJ Dillon, for me, he caught a few passes last year and showed the ability to do it. He didn't really do it that much in college. Incredible runner through the tackles. Do I think he's got the 3-down back potential? Yes, I think he could fill that role. Do I think he ever will? No. Matt LaFleur's offense doesn't really revolve around a 3-down workhorse, and we've seen that for all the years that Aaron Jones has been there, but we've seen that now as well. I'm not particularly a fan of, and sorry to keep coming back to Cowboys for some reason, but it's the Tony Pollard thing where you go,
love it.
We don't mind that.
You go at some point the start is going to drop off, and then it's going to be the backups backfield. That has basically never happened. It's especially when you're behind a player for a good few years, running back's lifespan is so short in the NFL that if they lose Aaron Jones next year, they decide they want to take the out on his contract, they decide they want to move on, they will draft someone else to fill the role. They won't just go, well, we've had AJ Dillon in reserve, now he's our 3-down back, let's unleash him. Coaches don't see things the same way fantasy players see things, that if it's really working for them, saying we'll give AJ Dillon a lot of the early down work, we'll have a 3rd down back in Aaron Jones, and we want a pass catching specialist, that's the way they want to run things. They're going to keep running things that way, and they're going to go out and draft a pass catching weapon, or they're going to go and sign a JD McKissick for cheap. They're not going to suddenly unleash the AJ Dillon 3-down workhorse. I think he can. I think he has the skill set for it. I was really low on him coming out, and I've really, really liked him since he's been in the league, especially a few of the games last year. He looks unstoppable once those quads get to work. But I don't think he's ever actually going to have a workhorse role for the Packers.
Yeah, first of all, I think we're all smart dudes because I've got Dillon and Aaron Jones ranked back to back at 24 and 25. So we're all in very similar ballpark here.
It's nice to have a little live stream where we're like, guys, we're all so smart, aren't we?
Give ourselves a pat on the back for that. I just like watching Dillon with my own eyes last year. I think he looked explosive. He looked brilliant. He looked the better back out of the two. But I think it's going to be a 1A, 1B scenario, like a Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They're both going to be top 20 running backs come this season. They're both going to be fine for fantasy. One's not going to replace the other. But if Aaron Jones does move on next year, then AJ Dillon's going to be 25 years old, so he's getting onto that, as we say, older running back.
Yeah.
So again, I think we've got them ranked in the right ballpark area. So yeah, one or the other, and I think they're both going to be top 20 running backs come this season. So absolutely fine. So we'll move on to the wide receiver position now, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, Lewis, because we are recording this, and you've got to choose who is going to be the Packers wide receiver 1 this coming season. And then also follow up to that is, are you into Christian Watson? Obviously the second rounder teaming up with last season's MVP Aaron Rodgers.
So my problem with this question is it implies that I have to choose a Packers wide receiver, and I would really rather not. Who do I think is going to be their wide receiver 1 for fantasy? I think probably Alan Lazard this year. I'm almost tempted to say Randall Cobb. I don't think it's going to be Christian Watson this year, because I think Aaron Rodgers historically takes a bit of time to align with rookies. If you look at Christian Watson on Player Profiler, the most similar player he profiles to is MVS. So people hoping Christian Watson's going to come in and absolutely replace the Devontae Adams role. I think we've got some news for you in terms of who he's actually been drafted to replace. And MVS, had some fantasy relevant games. He wasn't particularly fantasy relevant over the course of a season. He was really good for best ball because you can guarantee those shot weeks where he catches a 60-yard touchdown. But I think the wide receiver 1 is probably going to be Alan Lazard. I think he probably profiles. He's their best blocker, which means he's going to stay on the field all the time. He's a decent red zone threat because he's got a decent amount of size to him. He's fine. He's a good wide receiver in the NFL. I think the Packers wide receiver 1 this season has low end wide receiver 2 fantasy upside. So if I can take, let's say I'm drafting in, I'm drafting in best ball, and I can take Alan Lazard in the 14th round, Randall Cobb in the 15th round, fine, I will, and we'll see who I end up with. For this season, I'm not particularly in on Christian Watson. I really liked him when I was scouting him. He's a really interesting wide receiver prospect because he's not particularly good at catching, but incredibly physically dominant. And that's always an interesting thing coming into the NFL when you have someone that you're like, you're an absolute freak, you know, you're 6'4" or 6'5", whatever he is, and you run a 4.3 and like a low 4.3 at that, and you're strong as well. And they were a predominantly rushing offense at North Dakota as well. So he's, you know, a strong blocker as well, but had quite a lot of concentration drops, and is one of those where you think, you know, you've got incredible physical talent, and I love the fact that they traded up to get him as well. I'm just not sure that you're going to be particularly fantasy relevant in week one. I'm actually finishing up all of my rookie drafts now. He's one of the only first round talents that I don't have a share of anywhere, and it's because when I was in rookie drafts and when it got to the late first, when you had that, I think there was quite a clear Dotson, Pickens, and Watson group. And I had Dotson and Pickens over Watson, and I just found that I never ended up with Christian Watson anywhere. It's not that I don't like the talent, it's that I like the fantasy talent of the other two over him, because I think it's naive to think that he's being drafted for the Devontae Adams role and not the MVS role. I think that seems quite obvious to me, and would I take MVS at the 110? No, I wouldn't. So I'm probably not taking Christian Watson either.
I know, just watching Christian Watson, it was like watching men against boys in college. He was fantastic. And Kev, you're a fan of Christian Watson. Have you got many shares of Watson? Do you think he can be fantasy relevant in year one?
Yeah, I've got a couple of shares of Watson. I like the fact that they traded up for him, that there was rumours to be trading up into round one for him. Being honest, I think the wide receiver core, it's going to be a mess. I don't think there's going to be one standout stud as such that's going to consistently flash. I think they're all going to have the weeks. I think Sammy Watkins is there as well, so he's good for week one, I believe. And then
completely forgot Sammy Watkins existed.
We'll never hear from him again. But I really like Watkins, not Watkins, Watson. I like Watson. That's the one. Yeah, I've got a few shares. I think late first is exactly the right spot for him. Early second, even you can get him in some places. Just the track record when the Packers go early on wide receiver is really strong. The wide receiver room is not great either. Tight end room, which we'll come on to in a bit, is woeful as well. So the opportunity is going to be there for him to shine if he's good enough. Is he good enough? We don't really know. We can't really be confident in what we're saying because of the level of competition, but he has got physical attributes that could be great. So I'm just going to bank on. I did really like him as a prospect, actually, based on what he did. The draft capital is massive as well. Landing spot, I wasn't too fussed where he landed. It's more draft capital I factor in. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to Watson and Rodgers. I think it's going to be cheeky.
Romeo Dobbs is the Packers receiver that I've actually found myself drafting in quite a few places, just because, working with Carson Strong in Nevada, he was a really solid wide receiver. I didn't see too much difference between him and like a similar profile to Alec Pierce out of Cincinnati in kind of and when I put out my rookie rankings, Romeo Dobbs was in my tier 3 in terms of a project alpha. That's the way I tended to do things this year, is having a tier 3, which is projects and what they could potentially develop into. And he actually profiles, pretty strongly as an ex-outside wide receiver. So he's the one that I've ended up with a few shares of in rookie drafts, because you can get him in the 4th round. And I'm happy to take that punt then on someone who could eventually develop into a strong weapon for Aaron Rodgers.
I think with Dobbs, because he's been catching passes from a traffic cone, he's got to be noted as someone to watch. So, yeah, one to look out for, I think.
I can't believe we haven't mentioned Amari Rodgers either. A guy who I actually quite liked coming out last year, but we won't mention him anymore. So yeah, we'll move on to the tight end position. And Kev, it's over to your question.
Yeah, it's going to be brief. This Packers tight ends, we had a bit of fun with a couple of years back with Robert Tonyan. He he was on waivers and he had a cracking season, a tight end 1 season. We saw flashes after he got injured this season of Josiah DeGuara. It was like a tight end H-back hybrid. There was Sternberger in the past. I don't even know where he is now, if he's working behind a bar somewhere in Wisconsin or something. But just want to know, tight end room in the Packers, is there anyone that you want to own, or is it a wasted roster spot holding all these guys?
Jay Sternberger is the backup tight end in Pittsburgh, by the way. I don't know why I know that, but I do. It's a wasted roster spot for me. So I'm in one of my dynasty leagues, tight end premium. I took George Kittle very early on, and then I sort of punted my tight end too. So I ended up with Tyler Conklin. I ended up with Degara, and I ended up with some other bits and pieces. And after the rookie draft, when I was looking through, I took the decision to drop Degara because I thought that's not going to happen. Degara profiles as a fullback, and that's the way he's been used. And he's the kind of guy that you'll see the occasional flash from, because fullbacks have to be very athletic. They have to be big and strong. But the best fullback in football is Kyle Juszczyk, and he is not fantasy relevant. Don't get me wrong, I have been in desperate enough situations to start him before, but he is not fantasy relevant. Robert Tonyan, I'm fine taking a flyer on because his ADP is so low at the moment. So I'm fine kind of trading peanuts for him and seeing what happens. Or, if I'm sometimes in redraft leagues, if I don't get one of my kind of top 5 or 6 guys, and when you have the tight end cliff, I'll just draft 2 tight ends with my last 2 picks. Robert Tonyan will probably be a player that I'll be targeting around that range, just because we've seen him do it before, and because the wide receiver depth chart is so open. So he might be someone I'll take a flyer on. But there are other players I'd rather take a flyer on instead.
Yeah, I think you both summed it up pretty well. I'm in a couple of leagues. I don't really know why that you have to start. You have to start 2 tight ends. So I've got one where I'm trying to flog Tonyan at the minute, and there's just no interest. I'm building up the narrative. Come on, there's nobody else to throw to in Green Bay. It's going to be a decent weapon this year, but there's just been no takers whatsoever. So it looks like I'm stuck with Tonyan. And I hope for a repeat of his decent season, but I don't hold a lot of hope, especially with Anyway, we'll move on swiftly to the Detroit Lions, and
swiftly.
Yeah, we'll save him for the next question, but for now we're going to move on to someone that doesn't move very swiftly. It's Jared Goff. So keep trade cuts got him ranked at quarterback 30 right now. So do you think that's a fair ranking, Lewis, at quarterback 30? And do you think this is the final year, as last season, we see him as a starter? Or do you think he can have a decent season? And we know that they've added some quality weapons like DJ Chark. They've obviously drafted Jameson Williams. And then you've got the returning players like TJ Hawkinson and also DeAndre Swift, who missed some time. Do you think he can be a decent fantasy producer this year?
Jared Goff is someone that I really love, not for fantasy, but just for
look at the jersey.
Yeah, look at the jersey. Like the way we parted with him, I understand why we had to move on, because I've seen him make some absolutely boneheaded decisions and was holding the team back, but put in a great shift for the Rams and took us. I mean, obviously alongside Sean McVay, took us from being absolutely dreadful to being absolutely incredible. So I do have a lot of affection for him. QB 30 is too low for Jared Goff, and I understand the reasons why he's there, because it's the lack of upside. What's the absolute maximum? Everything goes perfectly for Jared Goff. All of the weapons break out in the way we want. What's his upside? QB 10? That's probably the highest he could really finish. The Rams refer to him as giraffe mode because he runs so upright. So there's no scrambling upside, there's no rushing upside, there's barely even that much passing upside. But if you play in a Superflex league and you're drafting a QB3 or even a QB2 that's going to have relatively stable volume, I'm fine with it. You are taking the floor over the upside pick. But say, for example, you are drafting in a QB in a Superflex redraft league and you've taken Justin Fields as a QB2. Maybe take Jared Goff very late on to say, in case Justin Fields doesn't develop the way we want him to, you can sort of rely on Jared Goff for 12, 13 points a game. The thing is, he's never actually finished as low as QB 30 since he's been a starter in the league. Like, he had some pretty relevant seasons in LA. He actually finished as high as QB 6 in 2018. Obviously, everything was perfect around him that year, and I'm not sure it is so much in Detroit. Although I love the weapons, I love the coaching staff, I really love the O-line. So if he's going to finish anywhere fantasy relevant, it will probably be here. I think they probably want to run the ball slightly too much for him to be incredibly fantasy relevant. Like I said, there's not too much upside, but can I see him finishing as the QB 15? Yeah, definitely. Am I going to own too much of him? Probably not. But is he being taken way too low? Yeah. In terms of, is this then his last season as a starter? I think the answer is no. Is it his last season as a starter in Detroit? Probably. They have the capital to get a QB next year. I found very interesting they decided not to take one of the QBs this year, although everyone decided not to take one of the quarterbacks this year. But I think when we're in a league that we're seeing Sam Darnold start regular games, when we're seeing Carson Wentz be starters for 3 teams, Jared Goff is always going to have relevance. So I think he's going to be that sort of bridge quarterback type, where you draft one of the, say you draft Anthony Richardson next year in the first, and he's not particularly ready to start just yet. Then you also sign Jared Goff, and you say you're going to have at least 8 to 10 games. At most, you might have a season and a half, and you're going to mentor the quarterback beneath you. And I think he'll always be good for that. It seems a good locker room presence, but I think it's probably his last year in Detroit, but I think he will be starting elsewhere in the league for the rest of his career.
Yeah, I love that. And Kev, I want to get where you are on Jared Goff, because he's someone that we rarely talk about on the wild card, just because he's not always been, ranked in the top sort of 16 players. So whereabouts are you on Goff? Have you got any Goff in Dynasty? And if you did have, what would you be doing with him right now?
I've sadly not got any Jared Goff. Is the first part to it, and it's not because I don't like him, because as Lewis mentioned, he has finished as QB 6 before. He had 3 top 15, I think, QB seasons on the bounce. So when everything is right, he can do the job. A little bit like Carson Wentz, actually, when he had that season in Philly where everything was surrounding perfect. He would have won the MVP if he didn't get injured, and he was on course for top 5 season. So, to be honest, I think Lewis has nailed it with the analysis of Goff, that even if he's not a starter in Detroit, he's got to have a chance at some other club, even if it is just a bridge QB for the time being. You look at like Marcus Mariota, for example. I love the guy, but he's a guy that's got a job. Goff's got an incentive as well. If he plays really well and gets the Lions to an 8 and 9 season, for example, if they overachieve a little bit, that's going to put them out of range of the top 2, the Stroud and the Bryce Young. And then they could take a shot on a guy like you mentioned, Richardson, or someone else that's going to creep through into next year's class. But they're going to take time. I think they're going to need a bit of time to develop. It's going to be a bridge QB. So you're going to get him for 1 season. You might get him longer. Ideally, in a Superflex, you do want a QB3 to play in those bye weeks. So I think he's well worth taking at his spot. I think it's a fine place to be going after him.
Yeah, I've actually done a couple of startups this offseason, and I've taken him as my quarterback 3 in both of my startups. It's just the way it fell with... He just fell. He seems to be fallen a bit lower than where I'd be taking him. I got him one as quarterback 36 and the other one as quarterback 39 in the startup. So I'm happy to have him, knowing that he's going to be a starter this year if I need him, and then next year I'll look to move on. And if I need to, if he's not going to be starting, there's no issues having him as quarterback 2. So there is with Jared Goff. So we'll move on to you, Kev, and we'll go to the running back position. What's your question?
Swiftly moving on to DeAndre, running back 2 overall ADP in Dynasty. An interesting ranking. Is there any concerns that ranking based on running back 10 fantasy points per game finish last season and 2 seasons where he's only played 13 games? He's missed 4 and 5 games respectively in his first 2 years in the league.
So I was actually going to bring up DeAndre Swift earlier, and I thought I'd leave it for this part of the conversation. When we're having the conversation about Aaron Jones and talking about Ezekiel Elliott and Derrick Henry, and this is kind of the inverse of that, where the age is such an incentive because the player is going to be on your roster for a lot longer, that actually you might be okay with the fact that they're going to be scoring less points. Take Jonathan Taylor aside, because Jonathan Taylor is the dynasty RB1, and all things go well for him, he will finish as the RB1 again. Do we think DeAndre Swift is actually going to finish as the RB2 next year? Probably not. It's in his range of outcomes. It's absolutely within his range of outcomes. You know, Swift was my RB1 coming out of college in the 2020 draft, and actually, people got so discouraged by the fact he went to the Lions that he ended up dropping to like the 103 or 104. And then who would you rather have between him and CEH right now? But we're not going to talk about CEH. You know, and he's incredibly talented. He's an incredible pass catcher, and has actually kind of found himself similarly to Aaron Jones, especially because he's having actually Aaron Jones running mate Jamal Williams in the backfield now. I think RB2 is in his range of outcomes. He's a home run threat whenever he touches the ball, and he's a fantastic player to watch. In some leagues, what I want to put together is a team of players that I really, really like watching, and he will often be in those teams. You know, I saw him take a screen 40 yards to the house in that horrible start to the Lions game this year, where they went 14-0 up against us really early on. So, like, I've seen him do it, and we all know how talented he is. I don't think he has the same amount of upside, and I don't think he's actually going to finish at RB2, just because I think volume is going to be a slight issue. I think they have more pass catchers around now, so he's not going to be force-fed the ball so much. Jared Goff does love dumping it off to the running back, so he will get a lot of that, but, you know, he's running behind a fantastic O-line. He might have a bit more red zone threat now with a slightly better offense. In redraft leagues, I'm happy to take him around sort of that RB8 sort of range, maybe back of the second, midway through the second, but I don't think he quite has the same upside to finish that high. So he's got that dynasty ranking for a reason, and the reason is because he's young, but he's had injury concerns and isn't in the best offense. I think he's slightly overpriced, but I also understand why, because RB is such a murky landscape at the moment behind Jonathan Taylor, as you were saying earlier. Like, you get these young studs that they're really good, but are they going to finish as RB1? And then you have these guys might finish as RB1, but they're also 25 years old. So it's so murky at the moment that, you know, he's my running back too. I'm not saying all of this because I have him ranked really low down, but this season, I'm not sure the upside is quite there.
I like that. And Kev, where are you on DeAndre Swift? Whereabouts is he in your dynasty rankings, and what are you doing with him this offseason?
He's running back too, because somebody's got to be there. I think it's not a spot that you enjoy taking in your drafts, because it's the start of a tier. You never want to be taken at the top of your tiers, especially if it drops like to running back 6 maybe. I've got a bit of Swift, but I'm happy to keep him, because even though he's running back 2, I don't think that value itself is massive. If that makes sense, the fact that he's running back 2, but his value actually isn't crazy compared to what it could be in a typical elite running back 2. So Detroit are going the right way. I don't think he's going to get the full workload, which is good for him. I think he's actually similar to a guy like Aaron Jones, like Alvin Kamara, similar body types, where you don't want him getting 20 touches a game. So I'm happy holding him. I'm happy to sell him in the future when his value goes up, even if his ranking stays the same.
Yeah, I like that. And I like what the Lions are building, as we both mentioned. The air line is really solid. So he could have, again, plenty of opportunities this season. And then is he going to get more red zone work? Are they going to score more touchdowns this year? They could well do. So yeah, I can see DeAndre Swift being the running back 2 again this time next season. So we'll move on to another young guy, a rookie actually, and Jameson Williams. I just want to get your thoughts, Lewis, on how high are you on Jameson Williams coming out this year? Is he going to be the eventual wide receiver 1 in this offense, or do you still like Amon-Ra St. Brown?
So, looking through my pre-draft rookie rankings, JMO was my wide receiver 2. After the draft, he dropped my wide receiver 3 just because I really like Treylon Burks and he profiles the same as AJ Brown, and they traded away AJ Brown and drafted him in the same spot. You know, I don't have to talk you through that. You know the upside to Treylon Burks. So he did drop to my wide receiver 3, just because of landing spot a little bit, because obviously it's not the best place for him. The guy is an unbelievable wide receiver already, and there's something about the home run threat that can do more than just speed. You know, we've seen wide receivers come into the league that get massively overdrafted. Take your John Rosses. I'm going to say Henry Ruggs, but I don't want to talk about anything else about him. But take, you know, players like Ross, like Ruggs, that get massively overdrafted because they're fast. Jameson Williams isn't one of those players. He is such a good route runner. He's such a good hands catcher. He's a very, very talented wide receiver. And I think the idea is for him to progress into the wide receiver 1 there. I'm actually slightly lower on Amon-Ra St. Brown, but we'll come on to that a little bit later. So I really like J-Mo. I've taken him in quite a few places, and you know, there's that group of 5 wide receivers in rookie drafts that generally tend to go between the 103 and the 107 or 108, with London, Burks, Wilson, Olav, and Williams. Williams tends to be going at the end of that range, and I think he probably has the highest upside, bar maybe Drake London. So I've taken a fair amount of him at like the 107, 108 sort of range, and quite happy to sit and let him develop, especially if he ends up tied to a really good quarterback going forwards. But I think it's an offense that I'm actually quite happy to have a share in at the moment.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Jameson Williams. It's a shame Matt's not on the stream right now because he is crazy about Jameson Williams. Kev, you're the lowest, I think, on Williams. Have you taken any shares of Williams in your rookie drafts?
No.
Okay.
Look, I think Williams, my tiers are slightly different. I've got sort of wide receiver, the top 3 are the standard 3, and then my tier goes sort of 4 to 9. Wide receiver 4 to wide receiver 9, very similar. I think I've got Williams wide receiver 8, just because I like the draft capital of Sky Moore, of Christian Watson. They were better. They not better prospects, but they were on. I thought they were on par as a prospect to Jameson Williams. I do have some slight concerns about, and it might be overblown, but just the fact that it was on Ohio, and he couldn't get a game against like Olave and Wilson. It just a bit of a strange one. Obviously, he's got talent. He went to Alabama, the best, more than often not the best team in college, and he filled a specific role. And it's funny you mentioned Henry Ruggs, because I have said before, I think he is what we wanted Henry Ruggs to be on the field. Yeah. I think he's better than Henry Ruggs easily. I'm not going to probably get him at wide receiver 8, but I'm not that fussed either, because I like the next guy we're talking about.
It's interesting with just quickly to touch on JMO. I think he's going to be one of the classic wide receivers that is always going to be better in real life than he is in fantasy. And that tends to be the case with these home run threat wide receivers, Tyreek Hill aside. You know, JMO is going to keep defenses honest. JMO is going to be able to draw underneath routes for other people. And he's also, you know, if they can use him intelligently, if they can use him similarly to how the Dolphins, I'm not going to say Tyreek Hill because I don't like saying, let's say every quick receiver can be Tyreek Hill, because Tyreek is incredibly different and twice the size of Jameson Williams. But if they can use him similarly to how, you know, the Dolphins used Jalen Waddle last year with lots of underneath routes and schemed up touches to try and let him then take the ball to the house, I think he can be really good for real life. I'm not sure he's ever going to be consistent enough to be like a fantasy wide receiver 1. So that's why he can be slightly behind the other tiers, because I'm not sure he's ever going to be like a dominant alpha. But I really like the guy. I really like the talent.
And his ceiling is massive.
Yeah. he's got another gear compared to the other rookies coming out this year. And the fact that they traded up so aggressively from pick 32 to pick, was it 12 or something like that to get him? I think just shows you how confident that they are in Williams going forward. So we'll move on to another wide receiver on the Lions. Over to you, Kev.
Yeah, the sun god, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Obviously, you touched upon him a little bit there. I have a feeling I know where this question is going to go, but we'll go with it. Just last season, he had his breakout. There's a lot of injuries on the team. Swift, Hawkinson. He was competing against guys like Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond and all those dudes. So just want to know if you think Amon-Ra will finish as a top 25 wide receiver this season, or was the success last season purely down to being the last guy up and everyone else getting injured?
So Amon-Ra had a 25% target share last year, and I can't see that continuing. They've gone out and invested free agency dollars in the wide receiver position. They've gone out and invested draft capital in the wide receiver position, and I think it's going to make their team better as a whole. And, there's the classic meme on Twitter of like, well, this might improve things for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I think there's an extent to which, JMO running deep routes will open up the space underneath, but that is not going to be every single play that James and Williams go route all the way to the house. Oh, look, Amon-Ra's caught his 11th pass of the game in the first quarter. Like, I'm generally of the opinion that I'm not hugely interested in day 3 wide receivers, and they generally don't tend to produce in the NFL, and there are outliers, and I'm sure people can name outliers. Tyreek Hill, Antonio Brown. Fine. Let's talk through the hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds that don't work out in the NFL. It's more likely than not that they won't. Draft capital tends to be the best indicator of a player's success in the NFL. And Amon-Ra didn't profile particularly well for me coming out. He's not the best athlete. And yes, he absolutely exploded last year. He's outside my top 25 for my dynasty rankings. He's not a player I'm particularly interested in. In fact, if I did own him anywhere last year, I sold upon the explosion because the dynasty community is so inherently reactive that we assume that everything we're seeing in front of us is the new norm and is going to continue forever. And I think Amon-Ra, fantastic. He won people leagues last year and brilliant. I can't see him doing it again. Do I think he's going to be, do I think he has wide receiver 2 upside, wide receiver 3 floor? Yeah, fine. Is he being drafted as that? No. So I'm not particularly interested at the cost at the moment.
Yeah, I think you're a smart dude, Lewis. I also sold my shares over the off season just because of that. There's still that hype with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Had done it before free agency because I think possibly people have dropped him a little bit. So perhaps he's settling into where he should be. But yeah, I'm not really interested in Amon-Ra St. Brown. What about you, Kev, the Sun God? Have you got him in Dynasty at all?
To be honest, not really, no. I know I thought you up a bit, but he's round about my wide receiver 30-ish, 30 to 32, I believe. I don't mind the short-term competition, the JMO, the Chark, because I'm lower than consensus on these guys, especially Chark. But I do agree with you. Longer term, I think they will add more talent at the wide receiver next year's class. I think it wouldn't shock me if they went QB, wide receiver, first 2 picks. It's deep at both. So me personally, if I've got him, I'm happy to see how it goes with him because I think his value will actually stick or even increase a little bit this season. But like Lewis alluded to, day 3 guy, there's a lot of competition in the short and intermediate game, like next guy we're going to talk about, like Swift. So yeah, I'm happy with him now, but I am also happy to move off him a bit later on in this in this season. Sorry.
It's exactly what I was about to say. Is we're all getting very excited by saying, okay, we've got JMO and Chuck on the outside. We're going to open up so much room in the short and intermediate game, and we're saying that for DeAndre Swift, and we're saying that for TJ Hawkinson, and we're saying that for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And I don't know how much football you guys have watched, but it's quite hard for 3 guys to catch the same pass. That doesn't tend to happen very much. And I don't know how it would work for fantasy. there's only going to be so much underneath work that these guys can get. And if we think TJ Hawkinson's going to be a PPR machine, if we think DeAndre Swift's going to be a PPR machine, we can't really think Amon-Ra is going to be a PPR machine as well. There's only going to be so much volume to go around in an offense that we don't think is going to profile for particularly high volume. One of those three is not going to happen. And for me, I think Amon-Ra is the one that's not going to happen.
Agreed. And I think you've TJ'd it up nicely for this next question.
That's worse than the Swift one. The Swift one was all right. That one's much worse.
I've been with Kev now over a year, and it's rubbing off on me, I'm afraid. We're going to talk about TJ Hawkinson. Obviously, had his injury struggles last season, but finishes the Titan 5 in 2020. So we've seen his upside that he can bring. Do you ever see him get back to top 5 level? Do you rank him there, or is he a buy, or is he a sell in dynasty for you this off season?
He's my tight end 6. There's like really clear tiers in terms of, I think the massive drop off happens just underneath him. I think for me, it depends on whether or not you consider Dallas Goedert in that top group. But you've got obviously Pitts, Kelsey, Kittle, Andrews, Waller, Hawk. And I'm considering Hawk in that top group. I'm obviously super young, aside from Pitts, obviously younger than the 4 above him. Which is very exciting. Profiles pretty well, really good draft capital, decent role in the offense. If we were talking any other position with the similar profile that I'm talking about and the level of volume I'm talking about, I'd say probably not in terms of like a top 5 finish. Tight end, who knows? Who knows what's ever going to happen with tight ends? There's going to be injuries. There's not a huge amount of upside for anyone, aside from kind of, it tends to be like 2 or 3 at the top, and then points per game, you're looking at not a huge difference between like the tight end 4 and the tight end 12. So I absolutely do think he can finish as the tight end 5. And I've taken him a few places, and I'm quite happy having him. The difference being, I think I don't feel the same level of safety with TJ Hawkinson as I do having one of the other top guys. So in a league where I have TJ Hawkinson as my tight end 1, I've actually just traded for Mike Gesicki as well. Whereas if I have George Kittle as my tight end 1, Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, I'm pretty happy to punt the tight end position afterwards. I think he has a similar level of upside. I think he has a slightly lower floor just from the offense, just from the competition for targets now, and just from the injury history that we've seen as well, and the tendency to fluctuate a little bit. I think he will be pretty good this year, and I'm pretty comfortable in redraft leagues taking him in that sort of tight end dead zone around like the tight end 5-6 sort of range. Where he doesn't fill me with the same level of confidence that he does, that some of the other options do. Especially like I think a year ago he was being drafted at about the tight end 3 or 4. I think we were all reacting to George Kittle being injured, and so TJ Hawkinson was going quite early, but I think he's settled in about the right sort of range for me.
And Kev, are you a lover of the Hawk, TJ Hawkinson? I think you've flirted with him being high and low. So whereabouts do you settle on him right now?
I think it's round about the right spot. I think sort of 5 to 7 is his range. I'm kind of avoiding him or selling him, if I'm honest. I think he's flash, but he's had to get a lot of targets to produce. And I know they say targets goes to talent, etc., but we haven't seen Swift have a full season yet. He's not really been in the same offense when the sun god broke out. Obviously, two super weapons on the outside as well in Jack and JMO. So there's a lot that's question marks for him for me. The fact that I mentioned it next season, they're probably going to have more wide receiver talent and good talent at that. So yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm. I'll be happy to sell off him, to be honest. I think his spot tight end 5 to 7 is fine, but
yeah,
I just like to move up just a little bit more and get just someone a little bit higher, maybe a Kelsey or an Andrews.
I think if you can either tear up from Hawk or tear down and get another piece, if you can tear down to the next tier of like your Godderts, Fryermuths, Knox, those sorts of players, I'm kind of happy doing that. Even, again, we're talking about different windows. Even if you're going to tear down to Zach Ertz for a year and get another piece off of it, I think there's a chance Zach Ertz finishes above him this year. So you can always look at playing things in a different way.
What about tear down to Dalton Schultz, Kev?
Ooh, you read my mind, Ali. I'm not even kidding. Yes, 100%. And same with Goddard. I've probably got Goddard and Schultz, maybe even above Hawkinson, but
You are a big lover of Dalton Schultz, aren't you?
it is a cowboy. It's a shot.
I moved him up in my ranks this morning. So
good lad.
Smart guy. So thanks, Lewis. We've now talked about the Packers and the Lions. So you've been a fantastic guest, Lewis. So can you just tell the audience where they can find you and what you're up to at the minute?
Yeah, absolutely. You can get me on Twitter at LewisWoodFF_UK. I write for King Fantasy Sports. You can find all my articles there. There's lots of content coming out all the time there. But just wanted to say like a huge thank you to you guys for doing this stream. It's amazing work from you guys. I've had my own struggles with mental health, and mine's been a charity that I've done some fundraising for in the past. And also you kind of use a few of the support services from. We work and we live in a space that's quite male dominated and can be quite sort of hyper masculine at times, a lot of trash talking. It's really nice to see guys like you stepping up and fundraising for a really fantastic cause and really helping to make a difference in the space. So really appreciate you guys having me on. It's been really fun chatting with you guys, but more importantly, really appreciate the work you guys are doing. And if anyone's watching this that hasn't donated, I really encourage you to. I'm going to drop the link around all of my friends and then guilt trip them if they didn't watch. So hopefully get some more donations in as well. And I've donated personally, and I think it's really, really great work you guys are doing. So thank you.
I love that, Lewis. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of the
Cheers for
stream,
coming
mate.
on, Lewis. Take care, mate.
Bye, guys.
See you
Bye,
later. Bye.
See, I've done better there. I've not cut off the person as they're leaving. We've done it nicely. We've done a nice switch over. And speaking of switch overs, Ali.
Yep. I'll see you boys in an hour. You can boot me out, mate, if you want.
Before you go, let's bring in Matt. I mean, Matt's back.
Here he is.
Hello. What a great guest Lewis is, eh? What a lovely guy.
I know, indeed.
He's a lovely guy.
But we've got to say that, haven't we? Because we're live.
That is true.
Just kidding, Lewis. Just kidding. We do love you. We do love you.
Yeah. So you're all refreshed, Matt?
Yeah, I've had I've had a cup of noodles to see me through for the next stint. Yeah, how many hours are we in now? 3? What's that? Getting on towards quarter of the way.
3/16.
Yeah,
that's
far too technical.
You're on 4 hours in a row.
Yeah, I like it actually. It's gonna be quite fun. My head's hurting, but that's because I've got through my cup of water. So it's gonna be like the desert. This one.
It's gonna be a long hour.
I'm fully
stocked up on liquids here, so not to rub it in, Kev, but
jealous. That's the benefits of recording from your own house. Right, Ali, we'll let you get off and refresh for the next stream in an hour. But we are still keeping this stream, so don't turn off. Thank you, Ali.
Cheers, guys.
See ya.
See, I'm getting better at this. This not getting rid of people for the say bye, unfortunately, like we did to Paul and Mags on the first one. So, Matt, me and you.
It is.
Me and you. We've got, like we said on our last podcast, the best two. The fantasy
the OGs.
So the time has come. We're now going to be finishing off the NFC North. We're going to be talking the Bears and the Vikings. We have got an unbelievable guest on with us. We'll introduce him right away. We've got Luke from B Roto Fantasy.
Oh, yeah, you
Good afternoon, Luke.
Doing well. Good show so far.
Thank you very much. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. Yourselves? Staying hydrated?
Well, I am.
No.
Kev on the other end.
Struggling with my hydration, but yeah, it's been a great day so far, and really looking forward to chatting the Bears and Vikings with you. Some very interesting teams, some interesting players indeed. So
it's going to be a bit Jackie and Hyde, I think, this sort of slot, isn't it? It's this one side that I'm going all in on, and the other one that I'm a little bit skeptical on. So it is.
It's going to be a nice blend, I think, for the next hour for the Streamathon and the podcast. So yeah, we're going to start off with the Bears, and I'll hand it over to you, Matt, to kick us off at the QB position.
Yeah, so like I've said, starting at the QB position, Justin Fields. A lot of people are talking about what the Bears have done in this recent draft and in the recent offseason. Not really added any weapons in terms of players to help out Justin Fields. Obviously letting Allen Robinson go as well, and he's gone over to the Rams. So I'm just wondering, Luke, how concerned are you with Justin Fields in terms of his longevity in dynasty? Do you still want to target him, or are you now becoming a bit concerned?
Yeah, this is it. I would say in the new leagues that obviously I'm joining, I've always said outright that I go with quite an aggressive. I basically approach a dynasty league as in I'm going with a redraft kind of mode, in the fact that realistically, as bad as it sounds, 3 to 5 years most leagues typically last.
Yep.
So I'm going in with a win now. If I'm looking at that, somebody like Justin Fields last year, what were he ranked 31 out of all quarterbacks or something silly? And in Dynasty, he's coming in 10 to 15. So even if you sort of go slap bang in the middle as, say, 13, it's quite a high price to pay for somebody who's got an offense, which, to put it bluntly, stinks at the moment. Like I say, they've got rid of Robinson. The guys that they bought in the offseason, like say, looking at Byron Pringle, they drafted Velus Jones. Are these really going to set the world alight? I'm probably going to stick my neck on the line and say no, to be quite blunt. So I'm looking at that. Realistically, he's got three targets. He's obviously got Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, and if you count in Montgomery, he's another one there as well. But yeah, I'm probably looking to trade him away in those more established leagues, and I'd much rather get people are going to pay a first-round pick. And looking at next year's draft class, I'm more in on those quarterbacks than I am on Justin Fields right now.
Yeah, I think Fields he's a guy he's dropped in value purely because of the lack of additions I've made this offseason. I've dropped him. I've actually cut Derek Carr above him, which is hilarious in itself. But yeah, I think if you go in your strategy of next 2 seasons, I've been more comfortable with guys like Carr, Stafford, definitely Russell Wilson over Fields.
Yeah.
Matt, coming to you on Fields, how has he sort of fallen in your ranks against the other guys? Was he QB3 last year? Is he still there now? Has the gap closed with guys like Zach Wilson? I'm not going to mention Mac Jones.
Yeah, like you touched upon, I had him. He was that QB3 for me last year. Really liked him as a prospect, like that upside, obviously, in terms of his rushing ability, and he did show that last year. That he can get you those points in terms of running the ball, but like we touched upon, it's been a tough off season. If you have got Justin Fields in leagues, I know I've got him in quite a few leagues, and it's been a really tough off season to go through. And for that, I have had to knock him down. He's still my QB3 out of that class from last year, but I've literally got him 1 spot ahead of Zach Wilson in my dynasty rankings. I've currently got Fields QB16 and Wilson QB17. I think on Keep Trade Cut he's going around QB14, so a little bit touch below the consensus. I do still think there's that upside, obviously, rushing the ball. And if he's got less weapons, he's going to have to run the ball, really, to keep this offense going. So you have to weigh that up as well. But in terms of the weapons, there's nobody we've spoke about. Obviously, Cole Kmet, Mooney, and maybe David Montgomery contributing in the receiving game. But there's definitely red flags for me in terms of what they've got currently. Maybe looking forward, that you've still got hope. Obviously, you've taken the first round of the NFL draft, so you feel like that they're at least going to commit to him for a couple more years, hopefully build an offense around him, maybe starting with the defense first. We know the Bears are a team that have been a strong defense for years now, so maybe they're just building up that defense and then going to get some weapons for Fields. But sadly, I think short term, I've definitely got my concerns with Fields.
I think you touched on it there as well. The Bears are a team that, from a fantasy perspective, when I'm looking at drafting, I want to see the teams that are going to be on the field for the most downs.
Yeah.
And the Bears are going to, looking at it, I think they're going to be on the field a lot more defensively than they are offensively, and that there takes an instant impact on fantasy points for me. Like I say, he has got that rushing upside that I look for, but in an aggressive draft strategy, I'm going to be looking at other rushing QBs to guide me through the first 2 years, and then obviously look at redraft next year when there's some nice QBs there. And you touched on it as well a minute ago. I personally, at the moment, I'd be going Zach Wilson over Justin Fields.
Oh, nice.
Purely because I look at the weapons that the Jets have added, and I like their weapons that Zach Wilson's got more than what Justin Fields has got. I know he doesn't have the rushing upside, but he's got Elijah. I forgot his name, but yeah, he obviously out of the backfield, throw the ball to him. Great option. And you got Garrett Wilson been added. You got Breece Hall there as well. So it's 3 solid targets. Whereas you look at the other side, yeah, I'm a little bit torn on Justin Fields right now. To be honest, it might just be the NFC North in the fact that as a Vikings fan, I'm reluctant to go there anyway.
I love that. I think as well, like you mentioned, Wilson over Fields. I don't hate it, to be honest. They're in the same tier for me. Yeah. So, on that thinking, if you can move from Fields to Wilson plus, that's a great move. And thinking about it as well, they're both guys that really didn't show much or in year one. They're both unknown quantities still. We haven't got a good read on them. So if you can get a cheaper guy that's got the same draft capital, and actually Wilson, he's got the regime there, the GM that drafted him, the coach that drafted him. Fields hasn't got that, so maybe there's some warning signs for Fields there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think one thing I would say is obviously with the Bears bringing in a new offensive coordinator this season, I think they are going to throw the ball a lot more, so we might see some more upside there. It's just a shame that the year that they've done that, they've lost Robinson, which kind of counteracts it, and we're kind of taking a chance on the fact that somebody like Vegas Jones, that gadget type of player, seeing what he can do, but I'm not quite there yet, if I'm honest myself.
Indeed. So that's Fields, who's a Russian QB, and we're going to come to the Russian running back now. David Montgomery, he's a guy that's going to be unrestricted as a free agent beyond this season. He's done pretty well in his career, actually. Probably better than I expected after year one, how he's done over the last couple of seasons. So I guess in terms of if you've got Montgomery on your dynasty team, are you wanting him to re-sign in Chicago with potential Fields there? Or would you prefer for him to leave and take the gamble on a landing spot for his dynasty value?
For me, he's got to stay in Chicago if I'm a Montgomery owner. Like I said, I've drafted him in a lot of new setups this year with the hopes that he stays in Chicago, purely because you're running that risk of if he goes somewhere else, is he going to get as many touches? He's one of the main guys in Chicago at the moment, and we're seeing that from a fantasy side of things. I don't like it. You're seeing a lot of these running back tandems, and there's that chance that if he goes somewhere else, he could be part of a duo there, which then straight away takes an impact on the fantasy side. So for me, I want him to stay in Chicago. And again, last year, we were absolutely solid. He was one of those guys that I didn't have many shares in him, and he just seemed to absolutely batter me whenever I played him in any kind of league. He's one of those guys that I didn't even look at last year, and then week in, week out, he was just absolutely battering me. So, yeah, I've made a bit more of a conscious effort this year to draft him a little bit more. So,
then you have to face him. That's it. I always think that's a smart move, actually, and it does trigger your mind when you're doing your rankings. If there's a player that always goes off and batters you, I guess you end up moving him up in your rankings and targeting him.
Is that like you with Josh Jacobs, Kevin?
Well, Matt, I'm not even kidding, Matt. You must be able to read my mind because
it's just because you mention it all the time, mate.
He does, but I was just going to come to you, Matt, and say Montgomery or Josh Jacobs are both going into the final year of the contracts. They're both with regimes that didn't draft them. Who would you take out of Jacobs and Montgomery? So we're on the right way.
Yeah. I think it's a tough. I think Montgomery is the one that's shown us that little bit more in terms of the receiving game. I don't know why the Raiders don't seem to want to use Jacobs in that receiving role. We've seen him have success in that role, and every year we seem to hope that he can take on that role, and they never seem to want to give him that opportunity. So that's obviously one knock against him. And whereas Montgomery, we talked about a little bit earlier, there's not many running backs in the league, and Luke touched upon it, that you could class as these workhorse running backs, whereas Montgomery, he seems to have locked down that backfield. Obviously, Tariq Cohen as well, he's now left while he didn't obviously contribute last year because of the injury. But I think is it just Darrington Evans now that's behind him on the depth chart.
There's Herbert as well still there.
And Herbert, yeah, he's obviously he's more like I class him more as the handcuff. He was used pretty much in the same role as Montgomery when Montgomery went down, but I just feel like he's the one that's that clear workhorse. And as I say, there's not that many left in the league that you could class as workhorses. And for that, Montgomery's the one that gets my edge here. Like Luke touched upon, I'm personally hoping he stays with the Bears just because of that situation, the fact that he is used it, and Luke touched upon it. If he was to move, who knows how that could play out. It could end on a team where they've got a strong pass catching running back and you then lose that upside. So, yeah, I'm hoping he stays in, and I'm taking Montgomery over Josh Jacobs. And looking at what the moves Ravens are making, I feel like they're potentially setting up ready to move away from Jacobs. So it's going to be interesting to see where he lands.
Yeah, thank God I don't have to face him again if he does leave. That'll be lovely. And to round off Montgomery, I'm the same. I want him to re-sign, not resign. If you is it Schefter that does that? But
yeah, Tom would love that reference.
He'll like that one. So obviously we've spoken about Montgomery. We're now going to come on to probably the biggest weapon in the offense, Matt.
Yeah, we've touched upon him a couple of times already. Darnell Mooney taken in the 5th round in 2020, but he's had a great year coming off that wide receiver 23 finish. I know me and you, Kev, and Ali as well, spoke about how we didn't really like Mooney, but he just seems to have fell into that ideal situation where obviously Robinson took a real step back last year, and with that, Mooney ended up being that wide receiver 23. So, Luke, I'm just interested to know, what do you think his current value is in terms of just looking at this 2022 rookie class? Where would you put Mooney in, considering obviously his value has taken a nice bump over the last year or two?
Yeah, this is it. When I look at this year's class, I'm probably saying, obviously, you got the likes of Jameson Williams. I think he'll get quite a big role over there in Detroit. Again, Drake London, he's going to be the alpha in Atlanta straight away. I'm not quite sold on Treylon Burks yet. I know there's a lot of comparisons to the AJ Brown thing and saying he's going to be the like for like. I don't think he's going to get any of that. So I'll probably put him maybe behind the top 2 in the fact that towards the end of last year, Darnell Mooney, like I said, I'm the same as you guys. I wasn't sold on him at all last year until he did take over that wide receiver 1 role in Chicago. And all of a sudden, towards the end of last season, he started to sell it to me that actually he could be quite a good receiver moving forward. So, yeah, for a guy that started to prove it towards the end of last year, I want somebody who's established and done it before over some of the guys that I'm kind of rolling the dice on a little bit more. So for me, looking at the situations there, I'm probably going Darnell Mooney at number 3 behind Drake London and Jameson Williams out of this year's draft class. Nice. I want somebody who's got a bit of a proven track record, and towards the end of last year, he more than shown that as well for me.
I mean, Matt, you've brought up about the picks in terms of just straight up against a rookie. Would you have Mooney? Where would you have him against? The moon versus the sky Moore, where would it be on that one?
I think that's a great one, because that's roughly whereabouts I'd probably say that he should be, around that where Sky Moore's going. I know you're high on Watson as well, that kind of back end of the 1st round in these rookie drafts that we're having. I think he's around there personally. I just see that little bit more upside with Sky Moore. I know it's kind of going against what Luke just said, and obviously Moon is that proven talent, whereas Sky Moore, we're all getting excited, aren't we, by that landing spot, and pre-draft he was a guy that I really liked as well. Just coupling those two together, the fact it's going to be tied to Patrick Mahomes, and whereas Darnell Mooney, although he's shown connections with Justin Fields, and as I say, they had a great season last year, I'm just reaching for that upside. I think I just see that little bit more upside with Sky Moore. So personally, I'd have Sky Moore just above Darnell Mooney, but as I say, I'd take him at the end of that. If I could trade a late first for him, if Sky Moore's gone off the board and I'm sitting with the next pick, I'm more than happy to move that pick and grab Darnell Mooney, I think.
And we'll come back to you, Luke, on Mooney. The fact that he's not got much competition for targets in this offense, and you touched upon that you think they might pass more this season. Do you think his value is going to go up this season, and that will give you an opportunity to sell if you want into at a later date? And would you do that, or do you think that if he does prove it again, you're going to stick with him till the end?
Yeah, again, if you're an owner there of Darnell Mooney, you're hoping and trying to bank on another good year, obviously picking up where he picked off towards the end of last year. Purely, for me, from a business acquisition point of view, I'm looking at selling him next year. Purely with the fact that there's some nice receivers coming out. Obviously, if you can get a nice high-end first and then trade some of the acquisitions you've got and try and package it for some hype to get somebody like JSN, then yeah, I'm all in for that. Obviously, again, I'm one of those guys that likes to wait on landing spots, and as you touched on there, obviously Sky Moore were a little bit lower down until he landed with Kansas, and now when he got Mahomes thrown away, he's just catapulted right up there, which is a no-brainer. So a lot does depend on that, but yeah, by all means, I'm banking on a solid season to sell him next year with some of the wide receivers in that class.
Yeah, it's a good strategy. We're not going to talk down the 2023 class, are we?
I was just going to laugh, Kev, because I remember. Do you remember when we spoke about? I was in a league with Rich Coolin, obviously a friend of ours, and he was looking to get Darnell Mooney off me in a league we were in together. And I was saying I was holding out for a first. This is obviously before the season started, and he only wanted to give me a second. And now I'm sitting here, managed to keep hold of Mooney, and to be honest, he's going to struggle to get him off me, even if he offers me what he was offering. So yeah, it's funny how things change in a year in Dynasty.
What if he came back for 23 first though, Matt? What if he did that?
For 23 first, he can have him. he can more than have him, definitely. Yeah, that's a whole different subject, but yeah, that 2023 class, it looks very nice.
Brokering deals on the Streamathon, quality stuff. I've actually got a prop for the next question. It's I don't know if you can see that. Something of Pringles, and it's just we'll mention Byron Pringle. He's the main guy, but the wide receiver two as a whole for the Bears, you've got Pringle, you've got Velus Jones, David Moore, Daz Newsome, etc. Just from that group of four mentioned there, Luke, is there any one of these that are worth rostering in Dynasty that you think could have some upside this season?
I'm not keen on any of that. The only person, like I said, the only person I'm taking out of them is Darnell Mooney. The rest of them, I look at Velus Jones. He's going to be a 25-year-old rookie by the time the season gets going. So that there is quite a big alarm bell and a big red flag for me. Again, I've never ever been a fan of Byron Pringle whatsoever. So I'm staying away from that as well. So yeah, so for me, it's weird. Every time I draft each year, I've got a strategy of there's teams that I avoid rather than players. So last year it was the New York Jets, obviously, and years gone by it's been Jacksonville, and this year one of the teams I'm avoiding is Chicago Bears. There's a couple of players, like say Montgomery's one, Darnell Mooney, and if somebody like Justin Fields falls on my lap as like a really late QB flyer, I'll take him probably. But apart from that, yeah, that wide receiver room is just not nice. Which from a Vikings fan, I'm all in. I'm liking it.
Love that, Matt. I know you're a deep sort of guy in terms of that's what I've been told. In terms of your scouting, you like these deeper guys, the rookie gems, etc. You've got plenty of truthers out there. Just wondering, same question to you: is there anybody that stands out you want to take a shot on?
I'll just start by saying I think that shows more about myself rather than my actual ability, because I just like taking these players that nobody talks about, and then when they hit, it'll be all over my Twitter and you'll never hear the end of it. So no, it is always good to look for these deeper guys, but like Luke said, there's not really anybody that stands out. Maybe Jones, if I was going to pick anyone, just because he's obviously just been selected. Feel like they kind of reached for him to get him. I don't think he should have gone as early as he did. Maybe that just shows how much they like him. I've heard that Justin Fields was kind of in the ear of the GM saying that he wanted him. So if there is that kind of connection, if he's a player that Fields wanted to have on this team, then maybe that's a way that I'm trying to somehow link some dots together to find something. But a little bit like we spoke about with the Ravens, even though I did talk up James Prochet, but it's just one of those offenses like Luke touched upon that it's hard to get excited by the wide receiver too. But yeah, if you're putting me on the spot, Jones is just the one, just because of his recently being taken in the NFL draft and potentially those connections with Fields.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's really hard to make a case for Pringle, for David Moore, for Daz Newsome. I'm just scraping the ball with that one.
Pringle showed a little bit of upside, obviously, over with the Chiefs, but I mean, that's one of the best passing offenses in the NFL. Yeah. And if they're struggling to do too much over there, then it's tough going. But yeah, it's a bit of a wasteland, isn't it, really?
I think there's go for it, Luke.
Yeah, I would say Velus Jones just offers that gadget kind of role. Like you said, obviously seen Debo come into his own, which if he offers even a fraction of that, it might be a worthwhile dart throw late on in the deeper leagues for sure. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
And you see Velus Jones going pretty late in rookie drafts. Like you think Tyquan Thornton's going late, and then you've got Velus Jones going. even after him, sort of late third, early fourth, some places. But one guy that just came to my mind was Equinemius St. Brown. He's on that team as well. It got me thinking. He's still the second best St. Brown in that division. So not that he would have a lot of competition to beat. It was only 1 out of 2 shots. But we're going to move on to tight end, Matt. It's funny how this is working, isn't it? That you get all the tight end questions.
I'm absolutely loving the Streamathon, to be honest. I think it's just like the third one that I've had on talking about tight ends. But obviously Cole Kmet's the lead guy over there in Chicago. Many are hoping that he has that breakout next year. Like we've touched upon, the lack of weapons around him, the lack of competitions for targets. So just interested to know, Luke, do you think he can become that tight end one that we're all hoping he can be in fantasy?
Oh, definitely. Like I said, obviously, there's probably a lot of people sitting on Twitter will touch on who I think is going to be the real tight end one. But but yeah, Cole Kmet, he's got all the credentials there, hasn't he? Like I say, he's one of two main targets there for the Bears. So if he doesn't do it this year, you're kind of looking at it thinking, when is he going to do it? It's one of those guys that in years gone by I've drafted as like my second tight end on a roster as like a backup. Never really produced, but this year he's kind of got to obviously show that worth in an offense where he's one of the 2 main targets. So by all means, I'd throw a dart at him and hope that he's stuck. And it's one of those, I've always got that strategy in fantasy that I'm going to look for one of the top 5 stud tight ends. If they're off the board, I'm going to look for value in other positions and then try and look at the likes of Cole Kmet and other tight ends out there that are going to break out. And he definitely falls into that category, but there's somebody else there that I like a little bit more at the moment.
And Matt, with Kmet, would you have any concerns with this offense? The fact that last season he got 0 touchdowns, he got 2 as a rookie. Would that give you a cause for concern or any pause on Kmet? Or do you just feel that with the complete lack of competition, if Fields throws for 25 touchdowns, he's guaranteed to get at least 5 to 8?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Kmet because he's a guy that obviously when he came into NFL, I liked him. It was a shame that Jimmy Graham seemed to just hang around and take those red zone targets. I remember thinking even in his rookie season that I just wish you could see the field a little bit more, be used a little bit more in the red zone. But Jimmy Graham at 34, 35, however old he was, just kept coming in and taking away those opportunities. Now I feel like this is the year where Cole Kmet's got a real shot at breaking out. And I brought the question up because I just wanted to say that I think he can definitely get into that tight end one range, definitely top 12. We talk about it when you're looking at these tight ends in fantasy. The one thing that always seems to stand out and when you're looking at the top guys is the opportunity that these tight ends have. You just got to look at guys like Kyle Pitts on the offense that he's on. He's the lead guy there. He's the wide receiver one there. Mark Andrews, who we spoke about, he's the wide receiver one, even though he's labeled as a tight end. There's just that common theme. And with somebody like Kmet, although Darnell Moon is obviously great, and we spoke about how good he was last year, I just feel like Cole Kmet's got that opportunity of being that real red zone threat, that guy that can contribute as a receiver, not just using him as a blocking tight end. He can be used in various ways, and that opportunity of getting on the field as much as possible can only lead to fantasy production. So, yeah, I'm personally really excited about Cole Kmet, even though the offense as a whole I'm a little concerned by. Luke touched upon the fact that the new OC hopefully getting some more pass attempts for this offense. Again, it can only lead to success for Cole Kmet. So, yeah, definitely a guy that I'm targeting. Obviously, tight end premium leagues, every league's a tight end premium league for me. Always targeting Cole Kmet as somebody that you can get as your maybe even tight end 3 in some leagues. So yeah, really like Cole Kmet.
And then back to you, Luke. Obviously, you do really like Cole Kmet. Is there anybody that's going above Kmet in Dynasty that you think actually, if I had this person in an existing league and I fancied a bit of Kmet who I could sort of move down from and add additional assets, is there anybody above him that's sort of a sell in your eyes to move down to Kmet?
To be fair, I've always been of the opinion that after the top 5, it's pretty close between the next 10 anyway. So for me, I know a lot of people are high on TJ Hawkinson. There's been times that he's burned me over the years, so I'm kind of a bit cautious to go there. Mike Gesicki, I think he might come out quite nice this year, so he's one that I'd probably look to keep over Kmet at the moment, purely with the new look Dolphins offense. I want a little piece of that. And then the rest of them, obviously Cole Kmet, he's well in the mix for me. So yeah, so it's one of those where, yeah, like I say, outside the top 5, it's so close between the next 10, 15 that you are pretty much throwing a dart and just hoping for. And like we just mentioned, then you wanted somebody who's going to be one of the main receivers rather than just seen as a tight end. So Cole Kmet fits that bill, and yeah, I'm more than happy to keep hold of him rather than try to sell him, to be honest myself. So yeah, so by all means, I want somebody who's going to be in the conversation to get some touchdowns, get a lot of catches, and bring a lot of fantasy points as well. So I'm probably going to stick with him.
Yeah, Matt, same question to you. Any thoughts on who you'd want to move off of to get Kmet?
Yeah, I've just been having a quick look at Keep Trade Cut while Luke were talking there, and there's one name that stands out like an absolute beacon in terms of who's going above Cole Kmet. Luke didn't mention him. Dawson Knox, I think, is the one name that is two spots above him at the minute in their rankings, and he's the one guy that stands out as somebody that I'd definitely be looking to move off. I feel like what he did last year, while it was great, a lot of it was down to that touchdown production that he had. And now you just got to factor in the offense that Buffalo got over there, the fact that they've got so many great pass catching options. For me, he just stands out as a clear guy. If I can get Cole Kmet plus something extra by moving away Dawson Knox, I'm doing it in an absolute heartbeat.
Yeah, OJ Howard season.
OJ Howard as well.
Exactly. I mean, he might not even been a tight end one for the Buffalo Bills next year.
Yeah, I'm sure they took a rookie as well, but that's Dawson Knox. Not bothered about him.
No.
We're here for the main event now for Luke.
This is it. Luke's been waiting for this.
We've flown through the Bears so quick. Like if you're a Bears fan,
we had to get through it because Luke could go for hours here about the Vikings.
Exactly. So we're on to the Vikings. It's your team, Luke. We've fallen really nicely how this has dropped. We're going to start at the QB position. Kirk Cousins. I really like Kirk Cousins. I think QB 21 at Keep Trade Cut. It's a simple question, and I'll let you just talk profusely about how good he is. Just wanting to know, like, Kirk Cousins at QB 21, is he the most underrated QB in Dynasty?
Big time. Yeah, I'm going to say when you got something like Jefferson and Thielen to throw to, why are you not taking him? It is that simple. Obviously, yeah. When you got two of the best sort of, well, I think Thielen's one of the most underrated wide receivers to draft, and you got Justin Jefferson, who for me is the best wide receiver. Obviously, I'm going to be a little bit biased, but yeah, when you got that sort of upside, and yeah, with a new coaching staff that we've got, where we're going to be throwing the ball a lot more. Even been talks this week that Dalvin Cook's looking to get involved a lot more in the catching game. So, yeah, for me, I'm looking at Kirk Cousins. He's going to offer superb value. And like I said, with that aggressive draft style that I go in with, you typically go with the studs, so Justin Herbert's these kind of guys. But as my QB2, I'm looking at Kirk Cousins all day long. He just offers that value. He's consistent. And the weird thing is, in the Vikings setup, like the fans that are around, a lot of them don't actually like Kirk Cousins, but yeah, it's like when Deshaun Watson went to Cleveland Browns, everyone was like, get Deshaun Watson, get rid. It's like, why would we get rid of a guy that's built good relationships with our receiving corps? And yeah, obviously he's just consistent, he's solid. And yeah, for me, I'm all in on Kirk Cousins all day long this year. And last year, and the year after.
Obviously, you're a Vikings fan. You've got a new coach, Kevin O'Connell from the Rams. Yeah. Do you think that adds to Cousins' value even further, makes him even more underrated, or is it a neutral move?
Yeah, I think we needed the change. It's been we've just been going along in a certain. The old coaching staff, it was pretty much let's try and get into the playoffs. That was the goal. Already, we're hearing much more positive sort of signals from our coaching staff saying, actually, let's get into the divisional championships. And this is what I like to hear as a fan. Obviously, I don't want to get out and try and beat Green Bay twice a year. This year, we're going to do it, so it's fine. So, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm looking at it, and all day long, I think there's going to be value there. You look at the way that the Rams did last year, obviously winning the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that that's what the ambition is from a Vikings side, but they threw the ball a lot and produced one of the best wide receiving season out of all time in Cooper Kupp. So, when you got somebody there who I think's much more of a better athlete in terms and got better ability in Justin Jefferson, then the sky's the limit there for me. So yeah, I'm loving it a lot there. I think there's a lot more upside and a lot more to come. I'm just gonna keep harping on all for the rest of the show about how good everything is.
No, I think obviously Cousins, I like him, you like him. I know Matt likes him. We've had a comment from Ali, who's there at Coast, and he put you like that, so we know that he likes him as well. But I'll come to you, Matt. Any final closing thoughts on Cousins at QB 21?
I just think he fits that mold, doesn't he, of one of those quarterbacks in fantasy football. When obviously a lot of us play Superflex, he's just that perfect QB2 to have. You just know what you're getting with him. A little bit like we always talk about with Derek Carr as well. Just one of those really solid quarterbacks. Man, have that upside that some of these guys that go above him in startups have. But the fact that you can get him at QB 21, you know he's going to put you the points up. It might not be that elite ceiling, but it's going to be rock solid. He's never going to let you down, is what I'm trying to get at. And in Dynasty and in Superflexes, I feel like that's something that people really overlook and don't really think about. But at times, you just need that really solid quarterback. And like you touched upon, he's constantly underrated. So to get him at QB 21, I'm more than happy to get him there. I think I've got him a couple of spots higher in my rankings at the moment. But yeah, it's hard to say anything bad about Cousins and the weapons like we've touched upon. It's exciting, the fact that he's got Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, while he's getting up there in age, he's still another rock solid, reliable wide receiver. So yeah, just a rock solid, steady quarterback to have.
I think actually the fact that Cousins is going there and you've got guys like Derek Carr, it's actually changed my thinking a little bit with startup strategies. I always used to hammer QB straight away and just not try and worry about the position because they'll go so quick and it's like top 15 or nothing. But with having guys like Cousins this low, you can leave it a little bit, fade it a little bit, and then just grab him as your QB2 whilst picking up maybe the elite tight end or a stud running back or wide receivers, etc. So, we do love Kirk Cousins. What a guy. And another guy that... exactly. And another guy who we've loved over the years, maybe not so much in the future, but I'll pass it over to you, Matt.
Yeah, so obviously there's only one running back that we really want to talk about over the Vikings. That's Dalvin Cook. It's just interesting looking at him this upcoming season. He's going to turn 27, yet to play a full season due to the injuries, and yet he's still being ranked as the RB9 on Keep Trade Cut. And if you can't tell by the way I'm setting this up, I'm not personally that high on Dalvin Cook, and I know this is going to be tough asking Luke as a Vikings fan, but would you be comfortable paying that RB9 price tag in your startups to get Dalvin Cook?
I actually would, to be fair. I know. I
thought you might.
No surprise, but yeah, no. For me, it's one of those. In a lot of draft, and a lot of the new startup leagues I've been doing, the typical guys are off the board early. I've even seen the likes of Breece Hall going above Dalvin Cook, which to me, I always want that consistency. Even though Dalvin Cook at times obviously goes down injured and hasn't completed a full season, when he plays, he's one of the best running backs in the game. Each week you're looking there, he's top 5, top 3 every single week guaranteed. And I want somebody who's proven day one. I don't want to kind of take the risk on somebody like Breece Hall over him in a New York offense over at the Jets. Whereas I know what I'm getting with Dalvin Cook. Obviously, I know he's probably going to get injured from me, but you need to obviously have that handcuff there, and it's not a bad handcuff to have an Alexander Mattison there as a backup. So, providing you cover yourself with that leverage, then yeah, I'm taking Dalvin Cook all day long there, and he's one of those guys that just proves it when he is on the pitch and fit. So yeah, by all means, I'm more than happy to take him at RB9, and I'd take that as a bargain as well.
Go on, Matt. Tell us the other side to the coin.
I don't want to go. I'm not going to go in too much. I mean, I said that I've not got him up there at RB9. I've got him RB13, so it's not like I'm a million miles away from it. It's just we see it all the time, don't we, with these running backs, with that cliff that we always bang on about with running backs, and like we've touched upon the fact that he has struggled with injuries throughout his career. That's just another red flag on top of the age concerns as well. But yeah, like Luke said, there's no denying when he is healthy, he is one of the best running backs. Again, he fits that mold, like we spoke about on the previous couple of streams, that there's not that many running backs that you class as a true workhorse, whereas I feel like Dalvin Cook is that true workhorse. Obviously, we know that if he was to go down, there's a handcuff there in Mattison who could slide straight in and become that workhorse as well. It's not really like there's a 50-50 split in Minnesota with these running backs. So that's just another reason why to like him. It's just, as I say, that longevity. I know Luke's more of a, you said it, he's more of a win now player when it comes to dynasty football. And if you are that win now player, then Dalvin Cook's probably somebody you should be going after, because there are going to be people like myself, one of those guys that falls in love with these younger running backs. You're able to get him at a bit of a discount. So yeah, if you are a contending team, then I'm not telling you not to draft Dalvin Cook. I just personally, the way I approach my dynasty, I'm a little bit more going to that, especially at the RB position. Anyway, I gravitate more towards the younger running backs. But yeah, I'm not going to go too harsh on Luke. I mean, it's his team, it's his running back, so I can't really say too much, can I?
I've got to admit, like the 4 running backs on the roster, I really like. Madison obviously he is the handcuff. I think if Cook goes down, it's Madison's backfield. It's not this sort of 50-50 with someone. Kenny Nwangwu, really like last year, cracking name. And I also like Ty Chandler as well. So it's a great backfield. You mentioned actually, Luke, about the Bears are a team you're avoiding. For me, the Vikings are a team I'm going after because I think there's quite a few values there. And it's that move to the new coach. I think it's going to really open it up. Yeah. But then just to finish on Cook, I've got him running back 10, so I'm round about that spot. But it is a tier of the older guys, Saquon, Mixon, Kamara, Cook. They're all in that same area where I'd probably rather take them over some of the injured guys like your Etienne, your Dobbins, your Akers, very close behind. So yeah, I'm a win now guy as well. So I do like older men. Well, being an old guy myself,
I do. It's only that. It's the fact that the coaches are saying that there's going to be that chance of the fact that Dalvin Cook might get involved in the passing game. Straight away, I'm liking that as well. If he's adding that to what he's already producing, again, it might leave him a bit more liable to get a bit more banged up. But if he offers that value, then wow, yeah, he's going to be an absolute steal in a win now mode team. But obviously, for those looking for the longevity side, then yeah, you probably wanting him a little bit lower down than where I've got him.
Yeah,
which I want to pay.
I'd actually love him more at wide receiver, I'd rather him catch more passes and not be getting smashed in between the tackles.
Do you think he's a little bit jealous seeing his brother coming in, obviously being touted as that pass catching running back? Do you think he's like, let me show you the real pass catching cookies?
I don't know if this is true or if I've made this up in my head, but don't you tend to find that older brothers are better at sport than the younger brothers, just thinking like Gary and Phil Neville and stuff like that? Ferdinand's, Rio and Anton, for example.
Yeah, it's a common theme though, isn't it?
So we'll pump the brakes on James Cook. Sorry, lad. But someone we're not pumping the brakes on, it's wide receiver, the main man for the Vikings, Justin Jefferson. I've got him neck and neck with Jamar Chase. I think everybody's got to have neck and neck with Jamar Chase. Yeah. You two dudes on this show, you've got Jefferson one, I believe. But I just want to know, out of those two, who we got, how close is it? Go for it. I'm
going to surprise you all on this one. It's Justin Jefferson.
I fell for it.
Purely, like I say, it's so close, you can't really call it. But for me, it's just that the thing that just about sways it for me is the fact that Jefferson's done it for 2 years. Jamar Chase, I'm still in that side of things. Is he going to do it this year? So, and yeah, it's one of those that obviously Cincinnati have got quite a nice number of options there as well, whereas the Vikings predominantly it is Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen as the main guys. So for me, Justin Jefferson just about edges it from a fantasy side, and even in an NFL side, dare I say it, obviously Jamar Chase has got a better quarterback throwing in the ball. But yeah, for me, obviously the fact that Justin Jefferson's done it 2 years running, that just about sways it for me, which might not be what everybody else agrees with, but yeah, it's just about the fact that he's got that consistency over his first 2 years. Yeah, he's on course to break some good records there for the Vikings franchise. So I'm there just.
And Matt, are you there as well?
I am there. Yeah, it's just they're both in the same tier. I will say that they're both in the same tier, and it's anybody that's not got them in the same tier, I don't understand why, because both of these guys are unreal wide receivers. I just think for me that the thing that separates them and why I've got Jefferson just that touch bit higher is I just feel like he's a little bit more safe than what Chase is. Just looking back, obviously it was his rookie season, so I'm not going to look too much into it, but over half of his games he had less than 5 receptions. just look at Justin Jefferson. That isn't the case with him. He's a guy that's used a lot in this offense. We've spoken about Adam Thielen, how he is underrated, how he's a great wide receiver, but I just feel like you're comparing the competition for targets Jefferson's got in Thielen, and then Chase obviously dealing with T. Higgins, another young, really exciting wide receiver. So just for me, that's what puts Jefferson just that smidgen above. But I do love them both. Both got huge upside, and you could maybe argue Chase actually has a little bit more upside than Justin Jefferson, just tied it to Joe Burrow. But for me, when I'm selecting somebody that high as my wide receiver one, I tend to sway a little bit more away from the upside and more to the safeness. And I feel like Justin Jefferson's so safe, and I think he's going to be fantastic for years to come.
I could be seen as being a bit of a hypocrite, actually, because I'm a win now guy. I'm thinking sort of 2-year windows. I'm thinking production that they've shown it in the NFL is big. And I've got Chase above Jefferson. So you kind of think, why is he doing that? He's picking a guy that's done it for 1 year versus a guy doing it for 2 years. I mentioned it earlier when we were speaking the Bengals. I think Chase, we've not seen everything from him yet. I don't think we have Jefferson either, but I think you can't go wrong with either of these guys. Just coming back to you, Luke, outside of these two guys, if let's say we're talking February 2023 after this season, do you think there's anybody from outside of Jefferson and Chase that could make the leap and join that tier with those two?
Probably not, if I'm honest. They're just in their own tier themselves. I'm still quite high. I know he's getting on a bit in terms of age, but I'm still quite high on, believe it or not, Tyreek Hill. To the Dolphins, purely for the fact that I think we're going to see him in that sort of Deebo Samuel gadget role, and with that speed and the fact of his ability, obviously catching the ball in the slot, then I'm still quite high on Tyreek Hill at the moment, so I'm still taking him anywhere I can. But he's not closing the gap in terms of the fact he's going to be another year older. He's not closing the gaps in terms of dynasty value on them two. They're in their own tier by some distance in my eyes, to be fair.
Matt, anyone from you? CD Lamb, I know you're a big fan.
See, who said that? That'd be Rich. I think you're talking about Rich Cullen. But,
I'm winding you up.
No, I think it's clear that these two are way ahead of the other guys. I've just been looking at my rankings, and I've got guys like DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill in that tier below, and it's hard to make a case for any of them really getting into that top tier. Obviously, AJ Brown, while he has shown that he can be a great wide receiver, he's obviously moving to a new team in Philadelphia. Kev, I know you're super excited about him getting AJ Brown, but DK Metcalf, another guy that Seahawks are going through change at the minute at the quarterback position. I feel like that's a knock against him. Cooper Kupp had a fantastic year last season. Can he match that again this year? Personally, I'm a little bit concerned. I don't think he can quite live up to what he did last year. And then Tyreek Hill, while I do love the talent, he's obviously shown what he can do over at the Chiefs, but now going to the Dolphins, it's hard to compare the two offenses, really. I mean, going from Patrick Mahomes to Tua, who are a guy that I do really like, and Kevin, I know you're the same. We've both been high on Tua for a while, but just moving to that new offense again, which is going to be not quite as well, anywhere near as high powered, to be honest, as Kansas City. It's just hard for me to really pick anyone to break into that tier, and then just going a little bit lower, you're looking at the older guys, Devontae Adams, guys like that. So I can't see anybody getting into that wide receiver, well, that top tier of wide receivers anyway. Even the incoming rookies, there's nobody really that stands out that I think's got that potential to get up there. So I think this time next year, I'd be shocked if it's not the same Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase top two.
Yeah, exactly the same. I'm really struggling to paint a picture for any of these guys making that big leap. I think CD would be the obvious candidate, but he's not produced anywhere near these guys, so it'd be cruel for me to put a Cowboys.
It's just interesting though, because he's in probably a better situation, obviously, with Amari Cooper leaving as well. He's that guy that maybe has that situation where he could see, and obviously the age as well, because we know the age, even though we're saying that you shouldn't get too hung up on it, you've just got to look at the rankings. It's always these younger guys that are at the top. So he fits that mold, a younger guy in a high-powered offense, that probably the lead target person over there. So, yeah, I think if you were going to pick anyone, CD Lamb's probably the one, but I can't see it personally.
Indeed, and obviously Jefferson's a stud wide receiver. There's another stud wide receiver on this team as well. Let's not forget about this guy's an older chap, so he gets my seal of approval.
Yeah, we've mentioned his name a couple of times already, and Luke's already mentioned how undervalued he seems to be. Adam Thielen, and in terms of fantasy, again, he's always undervalued. So my question to you, Luke, and it fits nicely because I mentioned if you were a contender, and you always seem to be that guy that's going for that win now approach early on. If you were in your rookie draft, what would you be looking to? Where would you be happy to move on and get Thielen? What pick would you be okay moving to grab him?
Yeah, see, I'd be willing to go as high, sort of anywhere between 8th and 10th round, really, to go in for him. And I've seen him in a lot of the leagues that I'm in drop into 12th, 13th, 14th round, just because people this is more super flex I'm talking about, but yeah, he's dropping that far down. I'm thinking, why is nobody taking a guy that is just solid? I know last season they were a lot more touchdown dependent, but he's always, because Justin Jefferson's so locked up, he's always tends to be open in the end zone. So if I'm there and I'm looking at somebody who's going to grab me 6 points straight away without having as much coverage as what Justin Jefferson's got, and I've not picked up Justin Jefferson earlier on, and I want a piece of that Vikings offense, then yeah, Adam Thielen at that sort of range where he's going is an absolute no-brainer for me. So he might be getting on a bit, but yeah, for a year, 2 years, if I can get some good value out of him, then he's an absolute no-brainer at sort of anywhere 8th round below for me, all day long.
Matt, are you feeling?
I think, again, it's like we spoke about with Kirk Cousins, really. He just seems to be that really solid guy now. I've got him in a couple of dynasty leagues where I'm contending, and he just feels like such a safe player. The fact that I've got him on my bench, I feel really good knowing that I can look down, see my bench. I've got Adam Thielen there. Yeah, he might not have that upside, obviously, playing alongside Justin Jefferson. He's not the sexy pick in this Vikings offense, but he just seems really safe. I know maybe relies a little bit on those touchdowns, but just a great play, and the fact that you can get him so cheap as well, it just makes him one of those key pieces. You find it with a lot of aging wide receivers. You can get them at a discount because of how obsessed people are in Dynasty with the age factor. The fact that you can get Thielen so late on, he's a guy that I'm more than happy to get. It's interesting just going to this upcoming rookie class that's come in and where I'd take him compared to that class, what pick I'd be willing to give up. I mean, if you can get him for a mid-second in your rookie drafts, if you're at that, you're on the clock in the mid-second, I'm more than happy to move that mid-second on. I mean, if I'm contending, I'm wanting those win now pieces, and I feel like that's the range where you're starting to look at these young wide receivers that may not have an impact year one, maybe even not year two. So if I'm win now, that's probably where I'm looking to grab Adam Thielen.
It's funny you mention that, Matt, because I've just come out of a rookie draft. I was at the 208, and I just thought, I've got 8 hours on the clock. I'll just say my picks on the block and see what's happening. It's a team that it finished at the 8th spot, but actually I think it is a contender. And I just thought we'll see what happens, see who comes back. And somebody offered me Adam Thielen, and I was like, yes, please.
Yeah, take that all day.
So 208 for Adam Thielen. I was happy about that, and I know it was a good trade because one of my league mates messaged me saying, that's a joke.
It's interesting though, because it kind of fits that thing. If the person that was selling him to you, if they're not a contender, I mean, why are they wanting to hold on to Thielen? So it's probably one of those trades where it works out for both sides. They get a younger wide receiver, potentially late second. I've seen a few wide receivers there that go late second that could be potentially something moving down the line. So yeah, that's probably one of those trades that just seems to fit really well. The ideal situation presents itself to you. So great move.
I think they took Alec Pierce as well, which is not a terrible move if you're wanting to get younger there as well. So, just a quick one, Luke, on KJ Osborne. Obviously, the Rams staff have come over. Do you think he'll be the Vikings' Van Jefferson, maybe someone that's possibly a top 40 wide receiver this season, someone that's potentially going to have value, also handcuff for if one of the top two goes down?
Yeah, you pretty much covered it there. I'm going to say in the deeper leagues, KJ Osborne's a great shout. Purely because, like I say, if one of them goes down, he's going to slot into that wide receiver 2 role. And as we've seen with the Rams last year, they got all their receiving options involved. So straight away, you're going to be looking at somebody that might, in a best ball format, is going to get you a few points, which might cover some of those drop weeks elsewhere. So yes, and he's going to be one of those that's got a huge ceiling some weeks, because as we've seen towards the end of last year, he did get involved a little bit more towards the end of the season and come in with a couple of touchdowns as well. So he's one of those guys that I'm more than happy to obviously take in deeper leagues. And yeah, if one of them goes down, and wow, what value you got there? You got the Vikings wide receiver 2 straight away.
Indeed. I thought I'd ask a question about Osborne just to drag it out a little bit and try to avoid this last question I was going to ask.
It's coming.
So, but fair enough. I'll do it. It's for charity. We've got Irv Smith. He's currently dynasty tight end 16. We just want to know: do you think he'll ever become a top 12 dynasty tight end?
Yeah. you see my recent tweets, haven't you? Yeah,
I have.
I've got it. Yeah, this is it. It shocked a few people, I think. But yeah, I honestly think he'll break into the top 8 this year, if not higher. Purely because the Vikings last year, which was somewhat surprising for a run first team, they actually ranked 12th in neutral passing. So if they carry on at that pace with the new coaching and even might even see an increase in that, Irv Smith's got all the potential to get involved as one of the. Obviously, you got Thielen and Justin Jefferson, but I wouldn't be surprised even if Irv Smith, if he proves himself earlier on in the season, he might even start being that number 2 receiver in the Vikings. And he's on a year where he's just come off injury last year, where we didn't see him take to the pitch at all, and he was due that breakout year as such. And this year, obviously, at the end of the year, he goes in as an unrestricted free agent, so he's going to have to prove himself to stay on the team, and we don't have anybody else in that position. And when you've got somebody who's a solid, steady pass pocket thrower of the ball, there's no excuses, to be honest. There's no excuses for him not to perform this year. There's nobody else to compete for that tight end role as well.
That's massive, by the way. Go on, Matt. I'll pass to you.
Kev, you already know how much I love Irv Smith. We've had this discussion, this argument many a times before in years gone by. It's a shame we never got to see what could have happened last year. I know, Kev, you're a big fan of Gronklin, as you like to label him. But yeah, Irv Smith, I absolutely love him. Loved him years gone by and love him this year as well. I think people forget as well just how young he is. He's still only 23 years old. I mean, he's basically the same age as some of these incoming rookies. So I feel like we've yet to see the true potential from Irv Smith. Kev, I know the argument we always have is when Kyle Rudolph was there and you was claiming he only took those 10 targets or whatever you used to say away from him. But it was about the opportunity. Kyle Rudolph was on the field a lot as a blocker, and if Irv Smith's got that clear role to be the tight end one, he's going to see the field plenty. And I just feel with that upside that he's got, he's one of these athletic tight ends, and that's what we always fall in love with in fantasy, these guys that can produce after the catch, making those routes and getting the ball. So yeah, Irv Smith, if you can't tell already, I'm a big fan of Irv Smith. I definitely think this is the year that he gets into top 12. It's not if he ever becomes a tight end one, it's going to be this year. And yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what he does.
I'm going to be kind because Luke's a Vikings fan. He's been a good laugh and a great analyst on the show. I do have pause with Irv Smith, the fact that he's had less than 50 targets in his 2 healthy seasons, 30 and 36 reception, I believe he had. But I do also see some positives. The fact that he is still super young, he's 23 years old. The fact that Gronklin's gone, the offensive... The coach, the offensive system, it's really leading to more opportunity, and plus this is something I saw the other day, that Cousins, when he was with the then Redskins, he was the sort of the main factor in Jordan Reed's breakout, who's potentially something that if Irv Smith could get to that level as a smaller tight end, but someone that's got that athleticism, that'd be mega, I think. Kirk Cousins bringing it back.
Yeah, I will just add that I've got him in that many leagues. I've actually had to sell him in some leagues. I've got that many shares of Irv Smith. It absolutely destroyed me last year when he went down. I know Mags, who's joining us at the Wildcard, he's a big fan of Irv Smith, and he kind of bigged him up, and then literally the next week he went out and went down injured. So yeah, I've learned my lesson there, not to get too invested in a certain player, but Irv Smith, he's got to be right up there in terms of players that I've got in most of my leagues.
And to be fair, so I sat on the Dynasty hot seat this week, so again, I'm bigging up Irv Smith there as well. It's like propaganda style stuff now. But looking at it, and it's like last year, obviously we got no Gronklin, as it's called, and Herndon so more. So 97 targets up for grabs there with a coaching staff that are more geared up to pass the ball more. So I'd expect him to have 80 to 90 targets this year at least. And you look at the years when he has produced. I know a couple of years ago, obviously, it was a bite-sized sample with Rudolph being absolutely everywhere. But he ranked like something like 13th in touchdowns. He had 5 touchdowns on the year. and yards per target, it ranked in the top 10. So if he can produce that into this year with more targets, this is why I'm after thinking that there's nobody there to compete. He's going to be top 10, and I'm putting my neck on the line here and saying he'll be higher as well.
Well, this is recording, so we'll
we'll sound clip that one.
We'll snip it. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the Vikings. Sadly for you, Lewis. It's the end of stream one. Actually, you're rounding out the end of stream one. So just want to say a massive thank you for jumping on, Luke. And before you go, just please let the audience know where they can find you and anything you're working on right now.
Yeah, so finding Meggy on Twitter, to be honest. So my handle is MCRS is Blue. I write for the guys over at Broto out in the States, and also the guys over here in the UK for 5 Yard Rush, King Fantasy Sports, and over at the Touchdown as well. And yeah, by all means, like I say, hit me up. We can have some nice little debates along the way, and I'll keep firing that Smith propaganda at you boys as well.
I will just add that Luke is a fantastic follow, but you have to get used to a lot of Manchester City talk on his
I tried to tone it down.
So there's a slight caveat to why he's a great follow. But
and I just like to say, like, absolutely fantastic, boys. What you guys are doing is insane, and yeah, like I say, it's going to go a long way. And I'll keep flying that flag for you guys and make sure that we've got everybody donating as well. And like Lewis said before, I'm going to guilt trip a lot of people into making sure that we get some money across.
Appreciate it.
Love that. Thank you very much, Luke. And
thank you.
All the best.
Cheers, guys. All the best with it.
See you later, man.
Bye.
Cheers.
It's the end of stream one. Let's bring him back. He's here. It's the end of stream one. We've got Ali back with us for 30 seconds.
Yo. Best 30 seconds off the stream.
Exactly. So you're refreshed. I'm going to be leaving the stream for the early part of the next one. So just want to say it's the end of stream one. It's the end of the first quarter in NFL terms. 4 hours done, 12 hours to go. The website to donate is below, justgiving.com fundraising, Fantasy Wildcard 2022. The next stream we've got, it's due to start very soon. At Fantasy Wildcard on Twitter, obviously the YouTube channel. And just a big thank you for all the donations so far. It's been great. I'm having a great day. I don't know about you two, but we'll see the audience again in a couple of minutes' time on a brand new stream.
See ya.
Yep, see you in a bit.
See ya.